Yes, indeed, folks. We're back for a very special show. Now, if you're listening to this and you're unaware of what the plan was tonight, you're unaware of the setup, you didn't see this concept take shape. You're thinking they always say it's a special show. Every show is a special show. And that's true. Every show is a special show. But this isn't just fake promotional talk this evening. This is a summer special, a spin off program. Grin Grappler presents 7 squashes of Sid as we add a grappler to the archives that cannot be simply fit into the usual format of this program. Who needs good matches, long matches, when instead you can watch a combined 11 minutes of professional wrestling, get together with some pals and talk about some demolition jobs, courtesy of Sycho Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, Master and Ruler of the World. It's a great time. We hope you're well, folks. We're going to talk about some professional wrestling this evening. Clearly, an expert panel. As always, the Grin Grappler squad in attendance. Bobby Two Shoes back in the building. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well, man. This one is really exciting. I've wanted to do a Sid Grin Grappler for a long time, and then you look into it, and he doesn't really have 6 good matches, so it's a little tough. But we found a good format, and I'm happy to do this.
Well, I think one of the lead issues was we discovered that we'd done one of the kind of good Sid matches, right? With the 12 bouts of Bill, which is another grappler who was unique in our history. And so, yeah, this kind of made sense as like a mid-month bonus episode for everyone. But I think it turned out well. I mean, it's quite the experience to watch these one after the other, all the different chapters of Sid, which we'll cover as we go here. Contrarian Alex back again. It's not really been that long, right? You were here on Friday. Feels like a lifetime ago, but how are you this evening?
We endured that Leo Rush Amazing Red match together. It was a night we'll never forget, but I'm doing well. Very excited. I'm always excited to get together for these, but this one in particular, because it's just what you just said, you outlined. It's a unique, a different episode, and we're going to talk about I don't think this is hyperbole, one of the most interesting wrestlers there's ever been.
Yes, I agree. I think a truly unique force of nature in that his popularity sustained across like a 10-year stretch. So much so that he was able to consistently, not even, like, burn bridges honestly too strong. He would just disappear.
Yes.
Yep.
And then, like, every time he would do it, the promoter would be like, okay, that's it. Enough with this Sid thing. And then next thing you know, you need to pop a number and, well, Sid's out there. Why don't we give Sid a call? And it's remarkable when you look at it, like the way we're going to do this here, where we go for each run of his career. He's always over huge no matter where he is or what's happening.
I think the statistic to assign Sid here from the jump that kind of encapsulates the bizarre nature of his professional wrestling run. He worked 2 WrestleManias, and it was in the main event of the 2 WrestleManias that he worked.
And let's be clear, that wasn't no like coincidence. Like, that's how he did business. I'm not the top guy. Well, I guess I can go home. I don't know. I mean, that seems to be the sentiment. So again, we'll cover all this as we go. Great to have you back, Alex. As always, of course, someone who was also on Friday's show inexplicably arrived in the midst of the Saturday morning chaos. The Oracle of Wrestling showed up in what felt like a dream sequence, frankly. It was like 4 a.m. for him. We were watching Marigold, and Oracle just showed up to confront Ibu about Taz. And I'm still reeling from it. Oracle, how are you?
I was really just trying to work an angle with Ibu, but he wasn't following along, you know?
He was so confused. And Io Sky was wrestling, which made it even tougher to understand what was going on.
Right. Really, I was just having a manic episode and I couldn't sleep. So I just
been there. Yeah, been there.
But yeah, I'm good. Enjoying some Zaxby's. Ready to talk about Sid, a gentleman who, I was first introduced with a broken leg on YouTube, or no, probably not YouTube, but like I'd heard about the broken leg, and I mean,
That would have
I'd
been like on
obviously seen some
E-Bombs
stuff.
World and
That was
shit
like,
like that back in
Yeah.
the day, man.
Way back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
saw the video first time in like probably like 05 or 06, like right when YouTube started.
It's one of the most infamous wrestling clips ever, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. And it's, if you're jumping ahead and getting ahead of ourselves here, it's like that really is the end of Sid's time.
Oh, absolutely, it's it.
Yeah, that's the end of the story, basically. I mean, there's a couple. We have an Eddie Kingston match that we was able to attach, and there's the alternative to that would have been the Heath Slater match, which Bob, I want give you a chance to speak. But I think you did a good job of highlighting how weird that was on Twitter this week. But yeah, it's a fascinating story. There has definitely been a shift in the hardcore fans' view of Sid. I know he was a bit of a punching bag for a long time, and it seems like the clip culture of social media where you just see him being like insane and doing cool shit. I think people have kind of grown to like, Sid was really fun, dude. Like, what a cool kind of piece of wrestling he was. So yeah, much to get into this evening. I do want to apologize here though at the top. As you've all been able to see recently, folks, the Late Night Grin has been growing rapidly. And so Bob's friend Elon Musk has stepped in, and I can now no longer stream these shows on Twitter, which I know a lot of you like watching them on Twitter. To do so, I would have to pay for a Twitter account, and with all due respect, no. So with that in mind, this will no longer be streaming on, on Twitter moving forward. So, Bob, what do you have to say for your boy?
It's a travesty, man. We were doing big numbers over there. We were doing WWE speed numbers.
We were. Well, people actually tweet about our shows sometimes. It was crazy. But, got to hold us down. Here's what it is. We used to. Okay. Let's so again, this concept's pretty simple. 7 Squashes Sid wasn't our most subtle name. It came together. We stuck with it. We have spread the matches across. The Eddie one is kind of like a bonus feature, but the other 6 are, representative of key chapters in Sid's career and all the kind of stop-start pushes he had at the top of national wrestling promotions. But I think it still makes sense to keep some of our usual Grin Grappler shape here. So let's start with Broad Strokes. Oracle kind of set the stage neatly in terms of our Sid fandom. I'd love to kind of see where everyone got started. Bobby, kick us off.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to think about that as well, because like I tweeted about yesterday, he wasn't in the WWF from 1997 till 2012. So, and he wasn't even like talked about really. Like, he's not a guy that like, he didn't do any of the Legends nights. He didn't do like Homecoming. He didn't even really like have the little moments they would share. Like when they do the lead up to WrestleMania ones or like the Undertaker specific ones, he'd show up in those. But like, yeah, he wasn't. It's weird. Like I saw him break his leg too. That's probably the first I was exposed to him. Outside of the Legends Wrestling game, which he's in the final 2, I believe. He's not in the first one, but he's definitely in the last 2. So yeah, kind of piecing things together, and then once the network came along, well, I knew who he was when he showed up on Raw, is the thing, and that was before the network. So clearly somewhere along the way, just by osmosis or whatever, you figure out who these guys are. But yeah, it wasn't really till the network until, I kind of got to dive into what he was doing, and turns out he rules.
Turns out, I mean, I remember in the early network days going through WCW, and it was when I was like, I thought I was cool, and I was like, oh, Sid sucks, Like, I was one of those guys. And then you get past that. And I think the transformative moment for anyone who wasn't a Sid fan and became one, MSG, Survivor Series 96. And at some point, you just have to you have to stop trying to be analytical, and you just have to go, look at this fucking guy, Like, look at him. Look at this, the energy he has and the presence he has. It's I think in a lot of ways, in fear of overstating this, especially before we do 7 squash matches, he is a great example of how like simple professional wrestling could, and if we're being honest with each other, probably should be, right? In the sense that, why did crowds react to Sid? Because he looked like that and he beat people up, dude. Like, and I think sometimes, and I think we're the worst for this, those of us that are as close to it as we are. It's like, that's wrestling, isn't it? I mean, it sounds like wrestling to me. So, I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of my timeline. And in recent years, I've become fascinated by just all of the different spells of Sid and all the different the ups and downs and the disappearances and such. So we'll get into it. Alex, I'm intrigued. Your fandom of Sid Vicious.
The maniacal one, as documented in Contrarians. Got my podcasting hat on. I'm sorry. As documented in Grin Grappler canon lore, the first wrestling event I vividly remember watching as a child was WrestleMania 8, and Sid was in the main event of WrestleMania 8. He wrestled Hulk Hogan, and Hogan. You know, that's what got me into wrestling. I was a Hogan guy. I know Bob is to this day, but like as a kid, that's what got me into wrestling. And then what I remember from my childhood of fandom was like Shawn Michaels was my Hulk Hogan. Like I know that I liked Hulk Hogan, but I don't remember it. But I remember Shawn Michaels was like my fucking hero when I was a little kid, which is funny now. But like, and MSG Survivor Series '96 fucking traumatized me, dude. I was like 8 maybe, and I remember like. Because I was living in Ohio at the time, so pay-per-views ended at like 10 or 11 at that, and so my mom was already asleep, and I wouldn't cry in front of my dad, but I had to go wake my mom up to get a hug because I cried when Shawn Michaels lost the title to Sid. So Sid was persona non grata for me as a little kid, and when he lost at the Royal Rumble, I was happy. But I I remember I don't remember wrestling without Sid. I remember early WCW. I remember like as long as I can remember having wrestling figures, I had a bendy Sid and I had the Galoob Sid. That the pose was perfect for doing power bombs. That was a great figure. And then Sycho Sid came along, and my first WrestleMania as a kid was WrestleMania 13. Fitting first wrestling event I remember watching, and the first WrestleMania I went to were the two that Sid main evented. So I remember at that WrestleMania, it always stuck with me because someone like in my line of sight had a cardboard cutout of a pair of scissors that said Sid. And I remember as a little kid, I was like, what the hell is that supposed to be? And of course, now I get the very smart reference to that. But all-time banger theme song. The Sycho Sid theme song is one of Jim Johnston's greatest achievements. And the big thing for me with Sid was I was never one of those guys that like thought Sid sucked, but I never also was like Sid fucking ruled until I had more access to like high-speed internet and shit, and I discovered his ECW run. And I was like, which again, it was fucking 5 matches, but like
so beast.
I remember watching that and being like, oh my God, Sid was the coolest wrestler ever. And then as I've gotten older, exactly what you called out. This dude main evented 2 WrestleManias. He was a WWF champion when that was like, it really truly meant something. He main evented Madison Square Garden. He was a WCW champion. He was a huge player in WCW. He was a fucking horseman. Like, But the thing is, he would just like, he didn't like care, I think is like, it's not the right word, but like the idea, the performances we're going to talk about, there's some moments of him in these 7 squash matches that is like, there's never been a pro wrestler that's ever been like that guy. And he would put in this performance, and as soon as he walked back through the curtain, he was like, well, I guess I got to go eat. You know, he didn't give a shit, dude. Like, it wasn't his dream to be a wrestler, but like, didn't give a shit in the term of like, you know, he didn't grow up wanting to be the WWF champion. Like that's what makes that transition from Shawn to him kind of comical in hindsight. But he's just such an interesting cat because of how much he understood the idea of performance. And people said he was like, he, you know, the critics of him, like he didn't get it. It's like, no, he very much got it in a way a lot of people don't. And then 2, just his ability to leave and come back and you know, just bob in and out, and then he's just kind of disappeared. He does conventions every once in a while now, but again, he's not one of those guys, and that makes him even more fascinating. You would think a guy like him in his situation would be at every convention charging everyone for every single thing that he does, and he's just like, I'm okay, like, you know, living out in fucking Arkansas.
Dude, he became even more interesting to me today because in preparation for this, because the matches themselves wasn't, you know, it wasn't extensive preparation, obviously. So I was watching some shoot interview stuff, and he becomes more interesting because he talks like, it's fascinating development, but he talks like he was like on Anderson in shoes. So like he'll talk about like working a guy, and he'll talk about explaining psychology to them,
Oh my god.
and like you don't have to go quick, and like you can do this. And I'm listening to this. This is like what's this guy's? He's a he's a maverick. Like because it suggests that he has a very different understanding of his career than
Everyone.
which makes him even more interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Like
yeah, that's
fascinating, brain.
I've watched some of the Hannibal stuff, and then I think the WWF got him to sit down one time for Talking
they
Heads for an interview,
Yep.
and like listen to him talk about. Well, I guess I got like a good laugh, and I could make that face, and people would react to it, and it's just like Jesus. It's the biggest thing I want to hit home about like remembering Sid from childhood to this day is as a fan of wrestling, he visually, aesthetically, one of one, as you like to say, Joe. You see that guy, you're never going to forget him, just like on a looks basis.
And they never did. They got a lot of opportunities to forget him, and they never quite did. So, and that says a lot. Oracle, you mentioned your starting point of being aware of Sid with that infamous clip. When would you say you became a fan retroactively? Go for it.
Oh gosh, probably I don't know 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, like, I was definitely of like the typical smart fan, like, oh, this guy sucks. Let me push my let me push my glasses in and talk about how he can't do a leg hold.
Where's Dean Malenko? That kind of thing. Right?
He's no Takata.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, Takata sucks anyways. That's not a good comparison.
Oh man, dropping bombs already.
Oh yeah, I'm part of that. I'm part of that crew.
I'm part of that crew.
But
the aces and eights over there.
But
the Gracies over here.
Okay, all right. But anyways, Alex always gets me early. I say something and he always gets me with something. But yeah, like the biggest thing with Sid is like, I mean, and we'll talk about it here. He doesn't even work stiff, He just like throws his leg up, and like all the jobbers do the work for him. It's just the way that he carries himself,
Yes.
And he eats the camera up, man. Like he just knows how to play to the camera. There's very few wrestlers in the history of wrestling who play to the camera as good as he does.
I agree.
There's a promo we'll talk about. There's a promo after the Public Enemy match where like they've got like his music, or like the dark lighting and the blue lighting, whatever, and he's cutting this amazing promo that like, and he just eats it up, man. Like there's nobody like that. Like he understood that, like he understood it was a performance, Like he understood the sort of charisma, He of course he obviously had charisma, but he understood he had it, and he knew how to use his own charisma. And like that was his number one, I mean, surely it helped that he was 6'8" and 300 pounds or whatever, but like he knew how to play his charisma to the camera, to the fans. That's why he was always over. Like, I mean, he never really tried all that much in the ring. He didn't. I mean, and again, we'll get to all the matches, but look at the Vader tag we cover. Vader beats the shit out of this guy, and Sid's like over here working like half the violence that Vader's putting in, but he's got all the sort of he adds so much to that match just on his personality alone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just to like, I mean, just in the last several years, I've really become a fan. It's just, it's funny because like when you sort of get it, it kind of comes off in like an ironic way at first, and then you realize that you go, you know what, he sucks in the ring, but that's not the point.
Right.
He's a great professional wrestler. There's a difference between being a great worker and a great professional wrestler.
100%. Yeah.
And he's a great professional wrestler. And you're better off in the long run being a great pro wrestler than you are a great worker. Although most hardcore fans like us would prefer to see great workers, and that's fine. I mean, I probably would most of the time. But you need guys like a Sid who can at least be a great presence, even if his matches aren't always good.
There's no way you can watch these 7 matches we did. Like, if you watch these back to back to back, there's no way you can watch them and not come away with, like, 1, the idea that Sid absolutely had a place in professional wrestling,
Sure.
and 2,
Yep.
you need fuckers like this.
Absolutely, you have to have them because and I'm gonna go. We go on spiels like this all the time, and I know it gets annoying, but part of the problem with today is they worry about having everybody who can go in the fucking ring. That shit doesn't always matter.
It's a variety show.
You got to have, and that goes for AEW, that goes for WWE, that goes for everybody. Like you've got to have people. Now, you don't want them to completely suck on everything, and sometimes we get that, right? But like you got to have somebody who doesn't, just because they're not good in the ring doesn't necessarily mean that they're like, for example, here's a good example, although I don't think she's terrible in the ring, and she can be, she's had some bad matches. Chelsea Green. She can bump pretty well, but she's not that good. Her offense is terrible.
But she's very valuable TV.
But she's a great character. She's very over. She knows how to play to her strengths.
Yeah.
Perfect example for today's wrestling. Chelsea Green. Like you need somebody, you need wrestlers like that. Like not every wrestler has to be, a fucking 10 out of 10 in the ring. Granted, I mean they've been doing this too long, but I've become a fan in the last few years. Braun Strowman, he's a decent enough comparison to Sid.
Yeah,
I don't think he's as good as Sid, honestly, because Sid's charisma was just
he's not as charismatic. I think he's more like
so much on another level. But Braun's a good
yeah. I think Braun's works more natural, but he hasn't got the same presence. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you need people like that in wrestling for sure.
He's the closest modern guy they've gotten the crowd to actually bite on like squash matches. I guess there was that very, very small, and I mean like 6-week run where people really got behind Ryback. But like, we'll get into part of the magic of Sid, and also the era was you could have a squash match and the people would be on their feet jumping up and down for shit happening. And like now, everyone's too smart, or the way squash matches are orchestrated, or they're done that like. I don't know, jobbers don't exist anymore, and like fans for whatever reason don't really get into it unless, and something that will always fucking work, and Sid is proof of it, there's some big dude out there who's just dumping people on their heads. Like that'll get over every time. That was Powerhouse Hobbs was doing that right in the beginning, right, for a while. Like that works all the fucking time.
Yep, Hobbs had some. Joe had a really good run of collision squashes where it became like one of the parts of the show. Remember that, Oracle, last summer? So you can still do it. Right, if you know like how to do them. Sid's
it's more difficult than it used to be, I guess.
Your point stands. Yeah, your point stands. Sid's an interesting case study in terms of era, in that, I think you could kind of very easily, argue that Sid was perfect for his era, right? The national wrestling and the explosion of that. And so, but I also think there's an argument to be made that, could you imagine Sid, like in the actual territory days, coming through for 3 months, killing everyone, putting over your top babyface and moving on, how much money he would have made?
Sid and Kevin Von Erich in 84 in the Sportatorium.
The reality is that's basically what he did.
Yeah.
It's just none of the promoters wanted him to do that because they were trying to have, long-term war, and success and so on and so forth. So he's interested in that regard. But nonetheless, folks, starting into some matches. Again, we hope you're enjoying this, where you're fired up to talk about some squashes of Sid. If you are, Bob, what should they do to that like button?
Smash that like button.
Smash it. Exactly right. Smash the like button. Subscribe. Send a Sid. Hit the bell. Send a Sid super chat if you're fired up about Sid. Any of those things, we appreciate them very much. Let's get started. August 27th, 1989 edition of NWA Main Event. This is a post, for anyone who's unaware. Turner has bought WCW like 9 months prior, but the NWA name lived on for like a while there, right? He's still got some time ahead of you. So that's the era. The Skyscrapers, Dangerous Dan Spivey is alongside Sid at ringside. Teddy Long is in the corner, and on commentary for this match, we have the duo somehow of Lance Russell and Paulie Dangerously for this match. And I couldn't wrap my head around this. And what made it funny was Lance spent the entire thing confused at why Sid was in a singles match. which was incredibly funny. But that's us up. The opponent is Lee Scott. And, well, it was a tough night for old Lee Scott, Bobby. Tell us about it. Lee Scott. And we have Sid Vicious. I'm going to try and update on the name changes as we go. Sid Vicious, Lee Scott. Bob, take it away.
Yeah, so we start off with Lee Scott kind of thinking that he can handle Sid. He runs into Sid and, just tries to get some punches in. Does not go well for him. Bounces off shoulder tackle, gets some punches. And Sid hits him with a lariat that he does a, inside-out flip bump on. And then Sid picks him up and press slams him out of the ring, from the top, above his head. He doesn't even, ease him down. He just throws the dude. And, from there, I mean, it's about what you'd expect. But those two spots, the first 30 seconds or whatever of this match is tremendous.
Yeah, that lariat bump is very commonplace now because everyone takes it.
Mm.
But you can tell it the place explodes in reaction to that. They think he's killed him. Lee Scott, this is a show about Sid, but the one little cool thing we can achieve with this, it really highlights the value of guys who are good at this job. Lee Scott that night deserved an extra pat on the back, didn't he? My goodness. I mean, he made Sid like an absolute killer. So, quite the presentation here for Sid, still emerging as a player in the wrestling industry. Oracle, tell us about this Mac Classic. Lee Scott, Sid Vicious. Go for it.
I'll never mute a Lance Russell commentary. So, when I heard Lance, I was like, oh, hell yeah, baby. And then, because he's the GOAT, I think he's we've talked about this before because JR's I probably say JR's probably the GOAT play-by-play, but Lance Russell's my overall GOAT, show host and everything.
Have you seen that video that recently surfaced of it's a half hour long. It's just B-roll of Kevin Nash, Jeff Jarrett, and Goldberg filming audio.
It's hilarious. And Goldberg has no idea what's going on.
Andy Kaufman. Oh my God.
Jeff cannot contain himself. You're right. Lance is just adamant that this doesn't make any sense that Sid's working a singles match. And it's awesome. But Heyman's shut up.
He's trying to move on, and Lance refuses to move on.
He can't let it go. He's so he's so confused by this thing. Lee Scott is a great jobber.
Yep.
He's known for being one of the better jobbers in Crockett and early days WCW. Tremendous here. I mean, just Sid basically the craziest thing Sid does in this match is what Bobby described when he picked him up and just threw him. He didn't even guide him or anything. He just fucking dropped him out of the ring. He does the I don't know. There's a name for it that that nerd Excalibur would probably give it, but where he picks him up for the razor's edge and spins him.
I know it as the Eye of the Storm because it's James Storm used.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I'll accept that one.
All right.
I'm sure there's some other ridiculous name for it, but and then of course he gets powerbomb for the win. But the way Sid carries himself, just early on here, all the way back in '89, he and the post match, he and Dan Spivey have some special handshake that they do and shit. And
they have a music video that plays off.
They're topping themselves. This shit rules, man. The whole atmosphere is great. Again, Lance Russell on commentary is amazing. The whole presentation is awesome, and just what an unbelievable performance by Lee Scott. And Sid is just I mean, carries himself as you should. Big, tall, fucking dude, sweaty with a fucking perm, fucking. Just good shit. What a this is in fact the YouTube video is titled "Greatest Squash of All Time."
Yeah.
But yeah, this is great shit, man.
It's awesome. Absolutely. It's not surprising at all what Sid would go on to do in this particular WCW run. Alex, what did you make of this squash classic here?
It's funny. You had said during the introductory period of this that the thing with Sid is just like look at him, and literally my first note that I took is look at Sid. He comes out here, and we get the elusive white gear Sid, by the way. So the only era of gear we didn't capture in here is singlet Sid. Sid did wear a singlet for a period of time, but we get the jean shorts, the long jeans, the black trunks, the blue trunks. So we kind of got everything going here. Yeah, you guys covered it. And Oracle did mention that Sid wasn't really that stiff. There's one here and one definitely in the next match of he would sometimes lay some things in or be a bit slop dog. And the clothesline here, the Rainmaker that he gives Lee Scott is he does that flip, I think, maybe involuntarily because Sid just hits him so fucking hard. And as Joe, you called out, and this is a common thread throughout this, but the crowd is like mental for Sid killing this guy. Like, and this was a problem, problem in quotations, but the skyscrapers with those WCW towns were supposed to be heels, and they'd get cheered because they would just fucking kill dudes. I think the most famous example is they wrestled the Dynamic Dudes on Great American Bash '89, and the crowd's going fucking ape shit for Sid and booing the shit out of Shane and Johnny. But yeah, this is awesome. Fine piece of business, and you can tell. I think kind of as a looking to our next match, this guy was built for Vince McMahon. Like, Vince had to have changed his pants the first time he saw Sid, man. Like, this is just, he's big, he's got a mullet, he's like, he's got the fucking jaw and everything. Like, Vince just saw a stack of cash when he looked at this guy. Undoubtedly, I mean, any wrestling promoter did, but like Vince specifically, what we know Vince likes and whatnot, that it doesn't surprise me to hear those stories that like his initial idea for Sid was to be the heir to the Hulk Hogan throne.
And that, I think that's proven by the fact that he makes the jump, because it's been said 1,000,001 times over. I mean, Jim Herd loved Sid also, right? And so he made that jump because he was pretty much expecting to be the guy in the WWF. Of course, before we get to that, you mentioned Alex, he's a horseman, which sounds like more of a real thing than it was, but he was a horseman. He gets a big push in WCW in that run after the skyscrapers business ends up. So with that in mind, I want to kind of go Grin Grappler here, and after each match, folks, we're going to open up the floor, get some suggestions. It should be noted this is the run that includes a Dave 5, right? War Games 91, I'm pretty sure is a Dave 5. So congratulations to Sid. Bob, another one that Kurt Angle has been toppled by. That, of course, features the devastating Pillman bump, which Sid and Pillman's an interesting dynamic that comes full circle later on in this Grappler as he's on color for one of these matches. But that match immediately comes to mind. Any matches we want to shout out from the first WCW Sid run, fellas? Anything come to mind?
One that I proposed for this, but it didn't fit with the formula was, I think it's Clash of the Champions 9. The skyscrapers wrestle the Steiners. It is what you would think hearing that. It's a non-finish, but for like the 8 or 9 minutes it lasts, it's just those dudes just trying to like the Steiners specifically not trying to give an inch. And Dan Spivey, for those of you not familiar with Dan Spivey, he was a bit of a wild card. If he wasn't liking the way something was going in a match, he wouldn't hesitate to make it go his way. There's a very famous or infamous skyscraper squash where there's some local talent who's not selling the way that Dan Spivey would prefer he does, and so he just beats the shit out of him.
He's also a tough dude and would not be messed with. There's a story of Dan Spivey like wrestling with the Road Warriors, and like the roadies, like he was like kind of rough with the roadies backstage, and usually that's like a no-no. And they were like backstage, they're like joking with Dan and stuff, Spivey, and like because they knew like he'd beat the shit out of them if like he's one of those guys,
But that match with the Steiners it's a Sid showcase in the sense of like the crowd is just in love with the idea of Sid getting in there and just picking these dudes up and throwing them down. I can't really remember. Did him and Sting ever have any like necessarily good singles matches?
They don't, but I have a good Sid story that popped me.
There's also I think like the El Gigante legend that there's allegedly these house show matches Ric Flair had with Sid that were supposed to be like phenomenal, which Such is the time, you know.
I'm under the sauce on those. You know the Sid Sting match at Havoc where Barry Windham puts the paint on and Sid beats Barry Windham, who's dressed as Sting, and they like Havoc 90, yeah. So, and this is peak wrestler brain. So Sid's talking about this, and Sid explains he was supposed to win the world's title, and he claims that Ric Flair didn't think he was ready, and politic and got him out of the spot. He then goes on to say that he thought he had legitimately won the world's title, and they pulled a fast one. The real Sting showed up behind him, and the referee said, "Take the Stinger splash," and they flipped the belt. I was listening to this story. I said, "That's a great story." And then he goes, "The people, man, it's one of my favorite memories." He goes, "Because we fooled the people." And I was like, "But wait, didn't you just say they fooled you too?" What? I couldn't understand what you in the interview didn't ask. It was he basically said
he was trying to work, and then he forgot he was.
Yeah, he
was working, I guess.
They shot on him to such a degree that he thought he was working. It was really, I couldn't believe it was one of those RF shoots where the brother's just reading the questions, like there's no like back and forth. How did he not ask a follow-up? I don't know if there's any evidence of this, but it appeared Sid was claiming that he thought he was going to win the world's title, and they just said, "Take the Stinger splash, brother." It's fucking awesome. So there's a note, but that match is not good. Nor is there other Havoc match in the later run.
Was he like at any point considered for the Vader character? I know Hellwig was. If it like Sid.
Sure.
If you can believe it, Sid doesn't have any notable time in Japan, but
he could have threw some money out there. I feel though, right?
Oh, dude, I was about to say, Inoki got a hold of that guy. He could have figured something out to do with him. Like
he would have hated the tours, wouldn't he? I feel like it would have drove him nuts. 3 weeks and be like, "Fuck this, dude."
Yeah, and he seems like one of those dudes who would have been just so inconvenienced by the size differential there. And been like,
however, knowing that baseball is very popular in Japan, was softball popular there as well?
Great point. Great question.
So,
great question.
So, you know,
I want to shout out the chat for the live NXT reports. It's very funny. Any other matches in that run? I don't think there are really any others because it wasn't. You know, I think this is. Not to say he ended up being a super worker, but I think you can actually visibly see Sid
the War
get
Games
better
match
through
is
the years.
awesome,
Yes.
But also Sid calls 20 spots in that match, and it's amazing.
Yeah, he gets better through the years, and I actually think it even shows in these squashes. You see him not that he ended up being,
Bret Hart,
Bret the Hitman Hart. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Speaking of Bret the Hitman Hart, let's head to 1992 World Wrestling Federation. January 26th, 92, to be specific, that edition of WWF Wrestling Challenge. We have Gorilla and Heenan on the call, I believe we had for this one, right? Mm-hmm. Sid Justice versus the Brooklyn Brawler, of course, one of the most iconic enhancement guys ever.
Isn't he awesome? When he, that doesn't exist. People love to throw the term jobber around anymore, but, the real thing, just the idea of this dirty bum, the Brooklyn Brawler who got in the ring and just his facial expressions when Sid's sizing him up and shit, and then he runs and tries to sucker punch him and shit. And I mean, there's a reason that even the most fed brain folk who they don't celebrate the past history, the Brooklyn Brawler can still show up on a show and get a pop. You know what I mean? It's just the idea of and it's
he's a genuinely iconic enhancement guy, legitimately.
Yeah.
This is some of these matches just happen to be interesting little pieces of history. This is after the 92 Rumble, which of course is one of the most significant moments of Sid's career because famously Hogan was booed for yanking him out of the Rumble, perhaps the greatest Rumble of all time. And that would be a thing Sid would cite forever and ever. And they edited it and so on. So he's still a babyface here. The Saturday Night's main event angle is about to emerge. So yeah, this is an interesting little piece of history. The squash itself is less this first 2 matches gives you a great example of how these promotions did squashes. In the WWF squash is basically 4 minutes of camera time while the announcers put over your angle.
Yeah.
In WCW, it was can you murder a guy tonight on TV? Yes, that's a very different mentality. But Alex, talk us through Sid and Brawler here.
Brother, Sid tries his best at one point. I audibly shrieked. He grabs at the beginning. He grabs Brawler by the throat to choke slam him. It's all Sid. Like Brawler doesn't go up at all, and it's all one-handed. Sid in one motion pulls Brawler towards him, lifts him up, and then slams him down as hard as he can. And the way Brawler's head bounces off that 92 WF mat, if he knew where he was the rest of the match, I would have been astonished. But yeah, it took me a minute to recover from that choke slam. I thought that was insane. One thing I caught here, I guess the idea for Sid's catchphrase was going to be, "If you've got the nerve, show me," because he crawls into the camera and says that after the match. And I thought that was very bizarre.
That's fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking ruled.
And then it cuts to a fan. Remember they would sell those posters at the gimmick stand of the wrestlers, like the fucking they're probably 18 by 24. The one of Sid is him in front of what appears to be the Roman Coliseum or some pillars or something. And it's, all those posters were just Hogan or Warrior or Brett, behind blue sheets behind him. But for some reason, Vince thought Sid was, a gladiator, I guess. Crowd loves it. All Sid has to do is turn and look. And there's the point where, so one thing that happens in this that it comes back around in the Public Enemy match, and it takes a real panel of historians / nerds like us to nail this down. But one thing WCW did that Vince hated was the guy going to the ropes or the corner with a wrestler to get the after mag camera shot. And Sid was a master at that. And there's a part where he's just got Brawler on the ropes and he's raking his eyes power bomb. And, I imagine Vince is you don't have to do that shit here, pal. That's not what we do. But then the replays, they freeze on Sid's face and just slowly zoom in on it at the end. Gorilla's WrestleMania 8. It's what you'd expect from this run. And it's, you can definitely get the sense of how this is presented, the way they talk about Sid on commentary. Like I said, the merchandise that they cut to and shit, and the fact that he had this catchphrase, I guess. Yeah, you could easily buy that they were going to make him he was going to be the original Lex Express or whatever. And, to hear Kevin Nash tell it, Sid told Vince, he's well, I think my money's in being this monster heel. I don't really need to be a baby face.
What a character.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to call it. He did this some in WCW, and he did it definitely during his WF run, because I remember him doing it at SummerSlam 91, because it blew my mind in retrospect. He was the first guy that did the Brock hop from the floor to the apron.
Oh,
and, they always made a big deal about Brock doing that, of look at the athleticism, Cole. And so Sid was the first dude to do it. He did it like nothing.
Take that. Yeah, fascinating kind of moment in time here more than anything else, I recall, right? It's an interesting kind of little stop in 92 WF. Interesting.
He has it's really only it's a 9-month run. That's it.
Yep.
And he's one of the top guys the whole time, and he just leaves.
Yeah, absolutely. He's literally one of the top 5 guys the entire time.
And we got the incredible "Shut up" to Mean Gene. Mean Gene is Sid Justice.
Yeah, Tony.
Is it because I'm not a movie star like Hulk Hogan?
His whole run in early 92 of squashes is amazing. And he this is one of many good ones here. Standard Sid stuff, but just the way he just again, every time I'm gonna bring it up, he just panders to the camera so well. The look that he always does, and of course when he looks, his whole perm shakes, and the sweat flies off, and he does the look, and it's just it's exactly. Yeah, he's like the crowd, like the fan. He knows the fans. He knows how to work the crowd. He knows the fans want to see the joke slam. He knows they want to see the power bomb. And it's also worth pointing out, like, especially with jobbers, like the way he does his power bomb is a lot different than others. Like he kind of does like the overhead waist lock, right? And then kind of like
It
this.
looks.
It's not like the perfect like head
It's
over.
weird.
He was watching his Onita tapes at that point.
Yeah.
So surely, It's sometimes it looks terrifying. Other times it looks like really flat. It's a very interesting move.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
One of these coming up, he definitely dumps a dude. But it always varied. Sid mixed it up. He had to keep it fresh.
Yeah, he didn't know he was going to do it every time. Yeah, but Bobby, anything to add on this? I'm aware, fellas, that when you're the third man on the, when I go to you third on these, it's difficult to add. But anything, Bob, you'd like?
No, he didn't do the power bomb towards the hard cam, which kind of took me out a little bit. But besides that, really good match.
He needed the performance center.
Yeah.
Maybe he could have got over. Maybe he could have got over it and done performance center. So, as we mentioned, short run. Mere weeks after this, you have the famous Saturday Night's Main Event that's on Fox. That one is, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Where he turns on Hogan, and that sets up, that show is interesting. It sets up the entire WrestleMania card. And then coming out of Mania, I want to say he's programmed with Warrior. And he says, well, maybe not. And I think that's the end of that. And away he goes. And he disappears for a year. And then he emerges. Oracle, correct me if I'm wrong, this Slamboree 93.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Kills Van Hammer.
Yes.
Which could have been a match on this, but I wanted to do the Vader tag because it's a nice little piece of history. So here we have Vader and Sid Vicious versus Johnny Gunn and Tom Zenk. June 19th, 93, WCW Worldwide. Before we get to this, actually, I should know. There's no matches really to call out from the first WWF run, is there? I'm not missing anything. It's pretty much.
No.
Not really.
Okay. Hogan match is terrible.
Yes, exactly. So I thought I was right.
His reaction to Rumble 92 is legendary, though.
Rumble 92 is the match, that's obviously a big moment.
He's good in it, and like his reaction is like awesome.
Yeah.
When he gets eliminated and he pulls Hogan out of the ring. Or no, Hogan pulls him, right?
Hogan pulls him.
He eliminates Hogan, and then
Hogan
pulls him, and like Sid's reaction afterward is like,
and the people's reaction. It's a crazy moment. So this is during the Master of the Powerbomb gimmick, and they're on the road to Beach Blast 93 with Davey Boy and Sting. Shivani and Jesse on the call, by the way.
Hey.
This is an alliance here that brings Colonel Robert Parker and Harley Race together at ringside. So much going on. This is a lost match, boys. I don't know if you know this. There's no record of this. This is not on Cage Match. It's not on History of WWF, whatever the hell. The reason for that, I believe, is that they go about 15 seconds before there's a disqualification.
Yeah,
because Sid froze.
The Masters of the Powerbomb only have like 2 or 3 documented television matches, right?
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
So Zenk is thrown over the top and DQ'd. And at this point, Shivani says, it's over. And Jesse says, how can it be over? There's nothing. No one's been pinned.
Because then it ain't over. The bell didn't ring.
Right. And then the bell had rung. Then the bell rings again, and Jesse goes, the match is just starting. All of this, what makes this incredible is they had to have done this commentary in post, right? Like they had to have, right?
Yeah.
The idea that no one just went.
The commentary is when like Sid and Vader are like beating the shit out of him for like 6 minutes. Tony Schiavone's like, oh my, he's like, oh man, we gotta get some referees down there to stop this. And Jesse goes, well, do you want to go down there and stop them?
It pops me that they did this in post, and no one was like, guys, can we start over on this 15-second match, please? Jesse, the match is over, but whatever. Really, this is about the post match. This is fucking awesome. Oracle, I'll go straight to you. This is an incredible piece of TV to close worldwide.
They murder these guys, man. Like Vader is like particularly torturous in this one. Like they line up. What one was it? Was it Johnny Gunn they line up on the stretcher to like beat the shit out of?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
murder him on the stretcher. And like Sid does Sid do like a big boot to him on the stretcher or something?
They do.
Vader like clotheslines
Vader's
the
lariat
fuck
is
out of him.
horrifying.
Yeah. Sid does a boot, I think. Yeah. And they keep putting guys on they keep grabbing guys, putting them on the stretcher, and then knocking them off of
Doing
it.
shit to him. At one point, Vader, excuse me, murders. I think Johnny Gunn with like a short arm lariat on the fucking on the stretcher, and like they're just hitting the power bombs and shit, and like they're like all like jolly and happy, and like it's like there's like bodies that they have like all over the ring, and they're like cut this promo, and like it's an insane sort of sight. It's this might be my favorite one. This and the Lee Scott ones might be my favorites. Like they're just like beating the shit out of these dudes for like 5 minutes, and like all these people try to come out and stop it, and they're like power bombing everybody, and just the post like the post promo is just awesome, where they're like laughing and like lapping it up and shit, and like cutting the promo on I guess Sting and Davey Boy before their match. But yeah, this ruled.
Dude, that like assisted powerbomb thing they were doing where Sid would grab the other guy's hair is like horrifying to look at. Like,
yeah.
Is this the best thing about this? Is it genuinely feels like two big lads just making up as they go along, and it creates a sense of chaos that is missing from wrestling a lot of time. This is a hoot, Bobby.
Yeah, this rules. The entire little short Master of the Powerbomb run is great. They got a couple great matches in there, which we can go back to after this one. But like, yeah, and one of my notes is like, first of all, wrestlers don't look like this anymore, but just no one's doing stuff like this anymore, and no one would even really try to do this anymore, and it's kind of a shame. I know, when Wardlow was coming up, AEW did kind of similar, where he just beat up a bunch of guys for a while. That was good. But yeah, it's few and far between, from this to, that. It's a shame, man, because this ruled.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, the WWF way of doing squashes became like the norm.
Yeah.
I think. That's not to say WWF didn't have good squashes. Yoko had some great squashes.
Yeah.
But this is like very much, this is very un-WWF, right? This is what we get here. This is like, it's not produced in any way. It feels like the lads are just getting sent out and they're just beating the hell out of them. It's like, it's very different. Which I mean, complimentary. I mean, that's the appeal here. So, yeah, this is a hell of a deal and that glorious post-match too. Alex, talk to us about.
Yeah, my first note is just holy shit, because what you see here, one, the WCW Worldwide graphics in 1993 were wonderful. Used to be better. Sid and Vader walk through the curtain there, and it's that thing where the camera guy's probably holding it by his waist and shooting up, so you just see the two of them kind of come into frame, like, yeah, and it's like we're basically seeing them from the waist up, and they look like as tall as buildings. You know what I mean? It's just like, holy shit, look at this. And then, yeah, I mean, the aside from a very unfortunate Grizzly Smith cameo, everything about this is tremendous. And like you said, it's nothing. It's just they're sending jobbers out there to get power bombed, put on a stretcher, wheeled out, and then they cut the promo afterwards, and it's just like, I can't tell you that wrestlers should go on TV today and do like verbatim or reenact or try to like be a modern version of what this promo is. But I can tell you when I watch this, I'm like, this is what's missing. And I know that formula doesn't really add up, but it's like you watch this and it's like these two dudes just yelling into the camera. And it just seems it's so here's what it is. It's so comedic through a modern lens, because like what they do here is essentially like, Tim Robinson's like, I think you should leave, like, or like Tim and Eric, if they did like a pro wrestling skit, this is kind of what they would do. It's just guys like big guys yelling and shit. But there's like this part of it that everyone now, for the most part, especially this guy that wears a scarf, you can tell rehearsed what they were going to say 300 times in front of a mirror before they went out there and said it. Whereas like here, it's these two big jacked up meatheads that you can tell they had their catchphrase. They're like, "Oh, Vader's like, it'd be cool if we said this," and Sid's like, "Yeah, okay," and they go out there and they say, "Do unto the man as the man would do unto you," and then they look at each other and they go, "But do it first." But everything else they're saying in that like segment is just them just saying like tough guy shit of like, and Vader hits his classic "Fear no man and I feel no pain," and it's just like the idea of these just fucking meatheads going out there and just yelling into a camera. It's comedic, but there's also like charm to it, and that's kind of like what it is. That's by and large, that's what the UFC is, and there's plenty of people who have gotten over in the UFC, MMA in general. Dude, that was like fucking Pride. The guy Gene that got over huge there were usually just Americans that like yelled into the camera and said like, "Oh, I'm gonna kick your ass," that type of shit. So, you watch this and you go, "That's professional wrestling." But then, the modern fans and like wrestlers of today would say you can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. But like, you have to understand what I mean when I say it, and like also how that could be interpreted to today. Because still, like, when a big fucking jacked up meathead gets on the microphone and yells, "I'm going to kick your ass," people will pop for it. Like, that's basically how it goes. Either they'll pop for it if you're a babyface, or they'll believe it if you're a bad guy. Of like, oh man, he might actually fuck this dude up. So it's a lot of fun to be had here. It's a lot of laughs, a lot of ooh, I hope that guy got an extra 20 for taking that power bomb. A lot of shit like that. And this is a perfect encapsulation of what Oracle was saying too. Sid's not taking it easy on these guys, but Sid's picking them up, putting them down, and fucking Leon's over there like and just throwing these dudes down, like sticking them on that WCW mat, man.
He was an animal. Just zero care for these fellas. Why bother? Right?
Yeah. I've been told that's why he wasn't a good wrestler, was because he took liberties. But
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard that. Yeah.
That's the common logic. Vader wasn't a good wrestler.
Fucking this is always out there. All right. Quite the time. That is an all-time bad catchphrase, which made it even better, by the way. Yeah. And they're how proud they are of it. That more heels, bad catchphrases for heels is always a good bit. So, the Sid Vader thing was famously supposed to culminate at Starrcade. Yep. Starrcade 93, the main event was going to be Sid and Vader.
Really?
And, yep, it's going to be Sid and Vader. And to put it mildly, plans changed as the Sid Vicious Arn Anderson incident took place and all that came with that. And it ended up, fear of making light of the situation, but, that, I think the reason people don't know that piece of history a lot of times because that is like one of the most fondly remembered Starrcade things ever that actually happens at Starrcade, right? With Flair and
it is amazing. That's like legit like a top 10 WCW match ever.
But if you watch 93 WCW, it does become more apparent that like it does kind of come out of nowhere. And that's why, because it had to come out of nowhere. It wasn't the plan. So yeah, that obviously brings an end to Sid's run in WCW's first run. So with that in mind, let's call out some matches. Of course, Beach Blast 93 was what that was what they're building to. There's a Clash Trios I want to circle. Vader, Sid, and Ravishing Rick Rude versus the British Bulldog, Dustin Rhodes, and Sting.
Yeah.
Which that sounds awesome.
I would say they're good wrestlers. That match is very fun. Any others to call out from this first WCW run?
I know he has a match with Flair like right before he gets fired. I think they taped it before he got fired because they were starting to set up that program on WCW Saturday Night, which is quite good. Besides that, no. Again, it was only like 6 months or whatever.
It's 6 months, and also I should apologize. Second WCW run, of course, we're already too deep in there. My bad.
It's Sid, brother. You got to keep up with where he's at. Yeah. It could have worked in the formula of this, but I'm glad we got some Master of the Powerbomb action. His return match at Slamboree 93 against Van Hammer. Old Van Hammer legendarily trained the Briscoe brothers in a ring he stole from WCW. Used to be better. But the Slamboree thing is, it's Colonel Rob Parker comes out. He's like, "Oh, I got my wrestler here. Here comes Sid Justice or Sid Vicious, I guess at the time." And like he's coming out. I think he had the red trunks, and the place is just going fucking nuts. And he gets in the ring, and it's that shit where he's punching, and it's like the guys in the crowd going, "Who?" And he's just like lighting up Van Hammer, and then it's like 10 seconds long, but it's what Sid was good at and what got over.
Hell yeah, the people love it. So
he also was in that very, very strange Fall Brawl, the War Games match of '93. That was like 15 minutes long.
Yes, the Shockmaster. He's in the Shockmaster.
Oh yeah.
Scene.
I don't give a damn who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's quietly a highlight of that ordeal, actually. Tremendous. So he's kind of not around in like '94, right?
Nope.
Dude, I was trying to remember.
He's in USWA '94. I have the '94
USWA.
yearbook, and he's in USWA. He like randomly shows up, and like Lance is like, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, Sid Vicious is here."
He also wrestled Dr. Death at the UWF Herb Abrams Blackjack Brawl in September of 1994.
Oh, well, hold on. Okay, that's fast. So the WWF return is when exactly? Please help me out on this.
Where he...
No, after Mania.
No,
So
it's before because he's Sean's bodyguard. So it's like
he takes because he becomes Sean's new bodyguard, right? Post.
so it's like early
Diesel.
'95 in the build to
Thank
Mania,
you.
and then like
Mhm.
the night after is when he power bombs, beats the shit out of Sean, and turns on him.
So then he turns on Sean. This has always confused me. So he turns on Sean,
Mhm.
and he's a heel, and he's in the $1 Million Corporation, which is one of the worst things that ever happened in humanity.
And he and Waltman were a tag team. He and 123 Kid were a tag
Yes.
team.
Yeah.
And then he he leaves again, and sometime in '96.
So that's the early Raw days.
And then he
like
comes
the very
back, babyface for when Warrior gets fired
right.
as
That's- That's the mid '96. So the early weeks of the Monday Night Wars, because that's when he's rolling with $1 Million Corporation, and as you said, he goes away. Dude, that '96 return where he's back with Sean, by the way, which is hilarious and wrestling's weird. I watched it recently in a national incident for the first time.
That match is good.
He is over as fuck.
Exactly. The match rocks, but he is like, his reaction to that match is genuinely staggering. Like, they want to see him more than anyone else in that match. It's remarkable. So then, with that in mind, he kind of becomes one of the top guys again. He wins the belt, as we mentioned, Survivor Series '96. Then you have the Rumble rematch at the Alamo Dome. Sean gets it back. And then you have the absolute, the insane road to WrestleMania that follows with smiles being lost and 4-ways and all sorts of shit going on. And it ultimately settles with him, as Alex mentioned. He was in attendance, WrestleMania main event, The Undertaker. This is right after that. They have just shot an angle that has realigned Sid as a babyface, which is very funny. This is, Bob, I've popped you this before. This is the suddenly I'm dominant era of Sid with the big light thing behind him.
Pyro and
This is Sid's last match for 3 months, and then he comes up and finishes up and just leaves. There's something about a neck surgery. I don't know, man. I don't know if he had neck surgery. I have no clue. But he's supposed to work. When they tape this match, he's supposed to work.
They're plugging. It's hilarious how it's lined up because I'm listening to the Laughs Fan 97 journey right now, and I'm on Revenge of the Taker. I started today, and they were talking about. I never knew that. It was supposed to be Sid and Brett at that show, and they're plugging it during this. Like Pillman's plugging the date and the show and everything. And
post match, the Hart Foundation watch they're moving forward here. Pillman and Sid, from my understanding, had had issues, and Sid makes a squeegee reference in this. Pillman and Sid had issues, and Pillman made a squeegee reference. He's on color commentary. This is a fascinating little moment here. Anyway, Sycho Sid Jerry Fox, April 5th, 97, Shotgun Saturday Night. If in your mind you're visualizing the Shotgun Saturday Night that existed for like 2 months, stop. It ain't that. It's usual TV taping, Shotgun Saturday Night. There's not a lot to this squash, to be honest with you. But at one point, Sid does throw like a Mirko Crow Cop style roundhouse.
God damn it! I had Shogun Hua in my notes. It's like a body kick.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's pretty standard. Bobby, Jerry Fox, and Sycho Sid. What do you think?
Yeah, kind of what we saw in the Brawler match. WWF does squash the same way. There was a part on the outside where Sid just drops him on the guardrail, neck first. Which, credit to him for taking that. Yeah, good stuff, man. Crazy that this is it for him for, like we said earlier, the next 15 years. He's got a couple more matches, but this might be the last one on TV. I know he works Owen a couple times, but yeah, he's about done, and it's wild, man.
He is, yeah. I think he does a couple.
He King of the Ring, right?
Yeah, he does these.
Oh yeah.
To your point, though, Bob, like that's what that means is this is the end of WWF Sid, basically. I mean, again, we'll talk about the Heath match, but like, it's just wild because he literally main events WrestleMania like the week or so before this.
Mm-hmm.
Only Sid, dude. Only Sid could manage such insanity. Yeah, Alex, talk to us about this Jerry Fox thriller here from Sycho Sid.
When you and Oracle were going over the timeline, it really fucked me up trying to remember, like, because of course Raw back then would be filmed a month in advance and in the can. So I was trying to that 96 exit he made at the very beginning. The last match he had on TV until he came back that summer was the Raw Bowl. Do you remember the Raw Bowl? Yeah,
good match actually.
It rules.
Yeah. And then the last actual match he had, at least according to our friends at Cage Match, he put over Bob Holly at a house show on January 6th of 1996 in New Haven, Connecticut.
Amazing date on that, by the way. Just proceed. Yes, good
calm
stuff.
Down, Bob. So yeah, where are we here? I think Sid, had 3 or 4 more matches in the WWF after this?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like. All right, so he wrestled Taker on Raw, house show match, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, and Sid against the Hart Foundation.
Pop.
The Hart Foundation. Oh, when he came back for King of the Ring.
Yeah. This is his last before the break. It's 2 or 3 month break, yes. 2 months, maybe.
This dark match here. Ken Shamrock, Sycho Sid, and The Undertaker against Jim Neidhart, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog. Maybe no bump tonight. So, yes, this is from... It's just insane, dude. Like, this is from when Shotgun Saturday Night, the first 10 episodes didn't pan out the way Vince thought they would. And we'll circle back to that here in just a minute because Sid has a memorable match from one of those. But it just became heat, basically. They filmed it before Raw or whatever. But the thing was like Sid had just lost the title at WrestleMania. And now he was wrestling this Jerry Fox guy on Shotgun Saturday Night. And he comes out and look, like everything else, man, that we're talking about in this lineup, it didn't sound to me like the classic WWE piped in crowd noise. Sid had these people on their feet going nuts for everything he did. And yeah, that he turns the hips, he pops the hips and throws that kick to the body, man. Just like he was training at shoot box. On commentary, one of 2 in this journey, which is hilarious. I did not expect squeegee references. And Pillman dropping this is particularly funny. For those of you who don't know, the urban legend is Pillman and Sid got in a fight in a bar one time. Sid went out to find a weapon and he came back in with a squeegee, and that, everyone kind of laughed at him. So it's funny here. But Sid dusts off the eye of the storm in this one. He picks up Jerry Fox and plants him with that. People are going nuts. And the power bomb here is vicious. No pun intended, but he picks up old Jerry Fox here and just dumps him with no care. And the funniest part to me is after this, on an episode of Shotgun Saturday Night, we got the Hart Foundation at the head of the ramp, trying to stare down Sid, but Sid couldn't be bothered. Sid must pose. He goes over, he does one of my favorite things. I'm glad we got one match where he did it. I think he only did it during the Sycho Sid run, the fucking last rites thing he would do before or after he powerbombs somebody. That's famously what he does when he knows Shawn Michaels is done. He does that. And Mance Warner, who's an indie wrestler, who I remember seeing a match one time where he did that, and I was like, all right, this guy's good. But Sid can't be bothered that Brett's up there. He goes to the turnbuckle and just, who's the man? Doing all that shit. And so it's our one time here. We get the all-time Sid theme song. Kind of. That Eddie Kingston match is, I think the sound guy missed a cue in that. But yeah, it's 97, as time has gone by and continues to show, it's one of the best and strangest years the WWF ever produced. And this is kind of like the tail end of Sid's run there. And after this, Vince really had no time for him. I don't know if any of y'all have ever read that transcript of is it 98, 99, 2000? Vince did a live interview on America Online. It's that one where like his computer's not working and it's a live transcript. And one of the first questions he gets asked is Sid coming back? And he says, God, I hope not. So I think Sid never stopped. Like, Sid was one of the guys that Vince couldn't bullshit and get him to do all this stuff. But of course, McMahon is never going to have time for a guy that just like, I'm going to stay home for a while. So Sid, he got his run and then he left. Because he came back for King of the Ring, and he was supposed to, like, they had announced a match for him at SummerSlam 97. I think he was supposed to wrestle Neidhart. And then he was just like, I'm going to go home.
Yeah. 97 is such this year of change, right? It's like a transition year for the company. It's just, while doing it, it's probably the most, so in terms of quality, it's one of their best years ever. It's fascinating. Oracle, no, I don't think there'd be a ton to add here, right? This is pretty standard procedure.
Yeah. I mean, the things that kind of stood out the most were Pillman shouting on commentary.
Yeah.
And me kind of chuckling that this was like, I always forget, like Shotgun Saturday Night had like a 2-year and 3-month run of like
just this.
Heat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until Jacked, really. Because I think it was Shotgun was still a thing until Jacked, I think. If I'm not mistaken.
Because once the deal, they just had to fulfill the commitment, right? Like, so
Jacked / Metal for a couple of years, and then they made Velocity.
Yep.
Here you go. Some C-show history. The Pillman story, Alex, that's when Sid's in the WWF the first time, right? He like sees the WCW boys while he's making big money for Vince. I'm pretty sure is the story. Like 92.
I believe so.
Around that range. So poor old Jerry Fox. He did his thing, right? Other matches from this run, we mentioned it, International Incident 6-man. Hell of a time and a really tremendous night for Sid in particular.
Both Shawn title matches are good.
Yeah, both Shawn title matches. The best Brett match is the cage match, right? Fair to say, the Raw one.
And you want to talk about like a significant moment in history? That's the match where Brett loses and shoves Vince down and says, "This is bullshit." One of the most famous moments in the history of televised wrestling. And Sid's great in that. The Shawn Survivor Series match, right? That would be considered his best match, like his best bell to bell.
Yeah, although I actually do quite like the Rumble 97 match, but
the Rumble 97 one is the one where he comes out and you smell that? I smell a power bomb.
There's also the angle on Raw and the build up to the Rumble match where you attack Jose Lothario's son and power bombs him backstage.
That rules. Yeah, it's good call. His highest rated singles match on Cage Match is the Shawn MSG match. Yeah,
that is like
I think they're close. I would probably pick the MSG match because like the atmosphere is so amazing. But I think they're both fair. I think I've always thought the Rumble match was actually better bell to bell, but the overall, like not by a landslide or anything. You know, it's close, but I've always the MSG match is special just because it's such a
Mhm.
big thing for the time.
I think if Sid Udy was here, he'd probably say that was the keystone moment of his career. Was that night in Madison
for
Square
sure.
Garden with those people? And like I said,
I would agree.
that's the Winged Eagle belt. That's when that belt like really meant something, and it it also has the great moment of Sid embracing Vladimir the Superfan after he wins the belt. That's a great moment. I did mention, I don't know if y'all remember, on our Mick Foley episode, one of the things I plugged was the one and only singles match he had with Bret Hart was on an episode of that initial run of Shotgun Saturday Night, where they would like operate out of bars and clubs and shit. That opened an episode that was closed by Crush and Sid. And it's not like a great match, but like the way the building's finagled is, I guess, where the guys changed in the locker room was like upstairs, and they had to like come down these stairs to get to the ring, so there's really no like entranceway. And so Sid's music hits, meep, meep, and the camera shows Sid like, and this is why Sid rules. He's like walking down the stairs, but he's already in full character. So his legs are kind of daintily going down the stairs when he's going, "Who's the man?" like walking down these stairs, and he hits the crowd, and it's a bar, and there's like, you can see like Vlad and like Charlie and some of the super fans at that show, but it's mostly just like drunk people that showed up to this thing. And so they are in a fucking frenzy for Sid because he's just walking through the crowd like, "Who's the man?" and like fist bumping people and shit. And he gets in the ring and he just beats up the Nation of Domination. And he gets a chair, and they go right to the wire of the show. And so it's like, and that's when it was live too. So it goes off the air while Sid is holding a chair over his head, going, "Ah!" And that's the way he cuts off. Tremendous stuff. And I do, yeah. I told Joe, there's one Sid promo. I don't have it verbatim, but I remember from his WrestleMania 13 before his match with Taker, because that was, they would obviously just shoot those live, and Shawn Michaels is in the ring, hot dogging and grandstanding, taking the moment for him when it clearly wasn't about him because he didn't want to do business. And they cut to the back, and Todd Pettingill's like, "I'm here with the WWF champion. He's beating Bret Hart. He's beating..." And Sid just starts. He's so fucking amped. It's the WrestleMania main event. And he starts doing that laughing thing, and he goes, "Todd Pettingill, you are right, my friend." And he immediately stumbles in his promo. He goes, "WrestleMania is the biggest event in the world." And he goes, "And tonight, when darkness falls, every man, woman, and child will be scared. Except for one person. And that is me, my friends. Because I'm not afraid of the dark. And I'm not afraid of you, Undertaker. And tonight I will prove that I am the master and the ruler of the world." And then it like cuts back to Shawn just still dancing in the ring. But look, that match is what it is. It's a cool moment in history, Taker winning. But like, that's the Sid thing here to call out is like, dude, he came out last at WrestleMania, and there's literally less than 30 people in history that have done that. And like, this run right here, like artistically, probably as much as like profile wise, this 95 to 97 WWF run. Oh, and before I forget, he is in the wild card match at Survivor Series 1995, which is one of the on paper craziest and in execution pretty good matches you will ever see.
I like that match. Yeah, I like that match. Good call. I forgot he was in that. Yeah, good call.
That's the first great show, Survivor Series 95, in a long time for WWF.
Yeah.
That's a classic show, man. Yeah.
It kind of turned them around. It started the turnaround, in my opinion. That was the very beginning of it.
Yeah. Okay, so then we jump to Sid's famed but brief ECW run, and we start with the debut here. January 10th, 1999, ECW Guilty as Charged. If you missed that name, Judge Jeff Jones will catch you up very swiftly in his pre-match promo. We have a mystery opponent set up here, and it is a famous moment in reaction because it is one of the ultimate examples of it doesn't matter what kind of fan, a smart fan, when they actually see him, they still respond a certain way, right? And he walks out with no music. He has the jeans, and he looks fucking huge here, by the way. This may be the biggest he looks at any point. And the people just all at once decide, actually, this is awesome. Yes, we are with this, actually. We're into this as a thing. And then what follows is poor John Kronus getting the hell beat out of him for about 90 seconds. So that's the deal. Guilty as charged. Kronus, Sid, Bobby, talk to us.
Yeah, it ruled, man. He comes out in a denim vest and jeans. Incredible look. And, Kronus tries to get a couple shots in, gets chokeslammed through a table from the ring to the outside, and really all it took. And the crowd into it the whole time. And that's the thing. Like, you laid that out. You can't replicate that. You either have that or don't.
There's some very funny chair shots where, like, Sid sort of like convinces himself while he's doing them that he can hit the guy a little harder. It's very, it's funny to watch the thought process take place in his mind. But yeah, this is this kind of works as an example, right? Oracle of like, I don't know, man. Like, think what you will. When he walks out, you're still gonna pop. It's Sid, right?
Oh, yeah, dude. Like, he comes out and like the place explodes for him, and he's like, I mean, he's fucking, vibrating his fucking head and shit, and fucking doing shit. He's coming out, and going nuts himself, and he comes in there. Kronus, who looks fucking awful here, just out of shape. Like Sid fucking right at the bell flings him over to a fucking table, and Kronus takes a nuts bump to a table. And Sid works like an ECW match for a minute and a half, and it's hilarious. He flings him through a table and hits him with a chair, and he's doing the whole Sid shtick, hollering with the fans and shit, and eating up that that he's getting this amazing reaction. Which, I mean, I don't know. I mean, ECW, was an interesting place, but these fans loved it, man. And beats the shit out of Kronus, beats him easily. But for the 2 months or whatever he was in there, for the 5 matches that he worked, he was
God.
Yeah, he was a god. He was probably the most over guy there.
Yeah, they do the big powerbomb chants. It's just,
yeah,
it's a happening. It's just watching the people realize they actually want this to be a thing is really cool. There's a novelty to it. It's very, very, it's a neat moment, I think. Crazy. Sid in ECW remains one of those weirder matchups that still feels weird, right? Even though it still doesn't quite work and add up in your brain. But when you see it, it's like, oh yeah, of course. This is quite the moment in time. Alex, talk us through it.
Well, it wouldn't be an appearance on the Grin Grappler if I didn't have a prop or two. So I have an ECW shelf that I still have a few in the package. I have the Rob Van Dam ECW that was a Best Buy exclusive that came with the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD. I have some of the original San Francisco toy makers. I try to get a representation of everything I loved about ECW and held dear. And one of the things was Sid. And of course, there's not an ECW Sid figure. So for the one and only time in my life, several years ago, I made a custom figure of ECW
baby.
Sid. I know the light's a bit harsh on him here, but there you go. There's Sid Udy in jeans. He's got the classic Sid elbow pad on, and so he stands triumphantly next to Sabu and Sandman and all the other legends of ECW.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And
not just incredible though, right?
No, certainly not. No. He hasn't got a figure on the shelf, I'd imagine.
I do have a custom Steve from Twitter figure that some people may confuse as just incredible. But anyway, this here, you're right. It's a lot of the old timer fans that are a bit older than me will say this was the night that the ECW fans outed themselves as just being marks pretty much. And when Sid showed up and they just went nuts for him because Sid was, he was the prototypical 8x10 wrestler. He was the WCW guy, the WWF guy. But I still think dude, when he comes to that curtain and those jeans and just yeah, of course you're going to go fucking nuts. That's not That's not John Cena coming through the curtain and saying like I'm a good guy, and it's not fucking.
Right.
It's not 2015 Roman Reigns, like being like just the Hulk Hogan light type shit. And it's not like fucking Bruno came through and tried to like technically wrestle some John Kronus in the middle of the show. Like Sid just comes out and he's like, "Who's the fucking man?" And then he beats the shit out of this guy for 90 seconds and power bombs him and wins. So like, of course people are gonna go nuts for that. That'll work for any audience in wrestling. And when he comes out, dude, like I've seen this so many times. Like my first notice as God is here, because when he walks through the curtain, just like, and to what we were talking about earlier, the whole thing was like, that's because Sid's just a strange cat. Heyman was like, all right, this is what I want you to do. And he was like, okay, I understand, sir. Yeah, just goes to the curtain. And like, he's such a strange performer in that way. Like you never hear, like Loki's a great example of like Punk and Joe and guys used to talk about like Loki had to like get into the zone before matches and shit. You never hear those stories about Sid. He just basically was like, this side of the curtain, he was one dude, and this side of the curtain, he was another one. Like and it wouldn't be so strange if he wasn't so fucking intense. Like that's what makes it so like that's what makes him such an interesting performer in the history of wrestling. Was that on this side of the curtain, he was just whatever. And then over here, he's, I'll fucking kill you. So he hits the ring, and like one of my notes was Kronus was also like regarded at one point in time as one of the bigger guys in ECW, and he's like 4 feet shorter than Sid here. All-time Jerry Lawler line he says about Taz on that Manhattan Center Raw. He looked a lot bigger on the Lucky Charms box. That's a tremendous line that he had. And if you can believe it, Taz got shoot hot about it. But like I said, I've seen this a million times, and it's one of those great wrestling spots where he grabs the choke slam and the crowd's kind of like, yeah, and then he starts moving towards the ropes and the crowd can sense what's going to happen. They're like, yeah, and he just moves Kronus over, and then you said it with the chair, and you got to keep in mind too, Sid's coming from WCW and WWF, where like we're not fucking marks that hit each other in the head with chairs. So Kronus is just standing there like waiting for him to hit him, and he does, and then he kind of does it again, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? So he like he's filleting a fish, he turns Kronus with the chair to his side, and so he can hit him in the back with it a bit harder. And then it's that's you can tell like that, and that's rest his soul, Kronus, and a lot of those Balls and Axel, those guys in ECW. It's not surprising that they might have had a few screws loose up top when they're just standing there waiting for chair shots to the head. But comes in, sick power bomb. There's never been a more mic'd wrestling ring than the ECW pay-per-view ring. That was the most mic'd.
Every fucking rope run and bump and everything.
And power bomb, 1, 2, 3, and like Oracle said, what does Sid do when he makes the cover? Finds the camera and glares into it with the Sid face of like, I'm here, motherfucker. And then Joey Styles. I did not plan this when I recommended some of these matches, but we get our second squeegee reference of the 7 squashes of Sid. Get a squeegee for John Kronus here. Also worth calling out, significant night for ECW. I think as history has shown, the main event of the show was their biggest title match they ever had, where it was Taz finally beating the franchise Shane Douglas for the ECW title. Not from lack of trying. It's just their talent was constantly getting taken either by WCW or WWF, so they were never really capable of doing like a year, 16-month build to a title match, and that's what's culminated here in Kissimmee, Florida. I think they did like 3,000 people for the show or some shit. And each one of them was a better person because they got to see the ECW debut of Sid.
It almost feels silly to say matches from this run because you mentioned it's like a handful of them, but any other kind of broad memories or moments to call out from this ECW run before we move on, because it is a significant part of Sid's history, even if it's very brief.
So one of the things I didn't know until recently was that he actually wrestled in the ECW arena, and that's the one Oracle called out when we were talking about matches of this, when he wrestles Vito Skull Von Crush. Is that who became Vito eventually?
Yeah.
Oracle, did you know that Big Vito has a pinfall victory over Mitsuharu Misawa?
Really?
Oh yeah, that's some buttfuck indie show somewhere booked that, and for some reason Big Vito got to beat Misawa.
Wow.
And I'm not talking about like Tiger Mask 2 era. I'm talking about like in the early 2000s.
That's insane. That's almost as crazy. I was gonna say this because Big Vito's actually better than him, but that's almost as crazy as Bronson Reed beating Okada.
Oh, Joey will pop for that one. Yeah, House Party 99, Sid's in the ECW arena, and then the only other real notable appearance for Sid was on the Living Dangerously pay-per-view.
I remember because it was 2 months because he let March, right?
Yeah, and it's the one that every once in a while the clip of this it'll make the circles on the Twitter timeline of the Dudleys come out and they do the fucking ECW Dudleys act and they hit the line of like, is there no man bad enough? Is there no man tough enough? And eventually leads to Jeff Jones coming out and being like, I can't hold him back anymore. And Sid comes to the curtain going, there's no man fucking tough enough. There's no man fucking bad enough. And then he gets in the ring and he gets right in Bubba Ray's face. And Bubba Ray says some highly problematic shit to him. And then Sid blows this big bubble in his face. He's got this like Bazooka Joe in his mouth and blows a bubble and he bites down on it with his teeth and pops it. And then the whole thing is like he beats up the Dudleys for a while. Spike Dudley comes in for some reason. And the whole payoff to it is that Sid ends up powerbombing Spike Dudley off the stage through a table. And if you know the physics of how that would work, it looks as devastating as you think it would. But this whole little project here of Sid and ECW, and one of the shoot interviews I have listened to him with Hannibal was him talking about his run in ECW, and he's like, Paul paid me. I went there and I just did what he asked me to do, and like, it's so awesome. Like there's no way around it, and it's one of those things that like proves the mission statement of this episode. Sid was fucking over everywhere he went, and he went to ECW. He wrestled probably a combined 5 minutes of time in the promotion over 3 or 4 months, and it's a run that people like. It is one of those things like on our Terry Gordy episode, we talked about how all wrestling is too easily accessible, but it is fun sometimes, like on Twitter or Reddit or something, to see like the younger fan that just discovered Sid's ECW run, because it's so brief, but it's such a novelty. It's a good time. Because
my brain is so warped by like content and the way we do wrestling now, all I could think watching this was, imagine that night, imagine twitter.com as it is currently, or X, I should say, sorry, Bob, as it currently is now, responding to this. Like, imagine the ECW loyalists, and can you imagine the war that would be taking place on whether or not ECW are actually going to bring in Sid to make some shots? And like, you would absolutely have a segment of the ECW diehards that are like, like Tommy Dreamer profile pics, like sweating bullets about this. Not fucking Sid, Yeah. And then he comes out and everyone just pops huge.
You have the people like Doom and Gloom booking that he's going to beat Taz at the next pay-per-view for the title.
Yeah. Let me guess, he's going to come win the belt at Paulie.
One thing that we can't overstate is how terrible the Jeff Jones promo before this match is.
Oh, Jeff Jones is awful.
Does he work? Terrible. Does he still have like a job in wrestling?
I think he runs. I want to say he runs AEW Social.
Well, for that, he's guilty as charged.
He is. Certainly is. Right, our mid takes for the super chat before we move to the last real run of Sid's career. He says, since we're about the underrated Sid, who has the best powerbomb in wrestling history? Great question. Bobby, what do you reckon?
Just off the bat, I'm going to go with Batista.
Yeah. I like the way Dave would do his one, I must say. Very cool.
Yeah. Brody Lee had a really good one. Not talked about quite as much. I liked how he did it.
He did, yeah.
Else? The Last Ride is fine. I mean, the Tombstone's better for Undertaker, but like, it's all right. I don't like the way Nash did it. I know he does it differently, and it's higher impact. But I never.
Really kind of just kind of drops guys.
Yeah,
he would hold them up and they would just drop them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who had an underrated one? JBL.
Yeah,
a really gnarly powerbomb.
We talk about that Eddie match. The one he gives Eddie in that match is VR Oodle.
Yeah. Eddie had him a powerbomb too.
I will say about the Taker last rides, if it was the right person, it could look tremendous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I remember Kurt taking some really good last rides.
Oh, I'm sure. Any other candidates, fellas? Mike Awesome.
Awesome, yeah.
His
might be one for me.
Yeah.
His power bombs were amazing.
Mike Awesome, had the Tenru. Tenru had a good power bomb for like the time period and whatnot. And
the Observer kids showing up. Here we go.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. Vader killed dudes with his power bomb, man.
Yes, absolutely.
And also,
for sure.
Sting. I think he only did one ever, and it's documented in Grin Grappler lore. He powerbombed Jeff Jarrett at Bound for Glory 2006, and it was a hell of a powerbomb.
There's some candidates for you mid takes. We never concrete answer. This is a good answer. Big LG from NXT Battleground.
Yeah.
Great answer. What a moment that was. You Oracle and I on screen popping in, and Alex in a Grin Grappler group chat. Sit out, powerbomb. All right, let's get to it again. Probably the last, I hesitate to say real match, but realistically, here it is. The August 26th, 1999 edition of WCW Thunder. This was a double taping, which explains why the people are happy to see Sid. It isn't quite the atmosphere we got elsewhere because it's a double taping.
The audio for this was terrible too.
Oh my god,
the commentary always bad, but
it was a mess. He returned to WCW in June 99, so we're a couple months into the run here. He had a few of these Thunder handicap matches. This was a bit of a play call.
The Millennium Man.
Yep. He's doing the winning streak gimmick. Of course, building to the big Goldberg match, which we discussed on 12 Bouts of Bill. Mike Tenay and Larry Zbyszko on commentary, which you could be fooled because then, as Oracle mentioned, their sound it's a mess. I think this is our longest match of the night because I think this clocks in at a whopping 2 minutes and 34 seconds. It's more of a novelty thing. This is right. It's like a cool kind of quirky piece of history. It didn't go much beyond that for me personally. Oracle, what did it do for you?
This is the worst match of all of them, to be honest. But my favorite parts were when Sid came out, and even then, the filming of it, the WWE production was still awesome. Where he'd come in, he comes out, and Sid's doing his thing, and they do the fadeaway. Where he goes, I just love this production so much. Because this is still a few weeks before Bischoff got fired. And the post match is the highlight for me. He does a choke slam, double choke slam. I think he does a powerbomb or whatever, but he gets on his knees or whatever at one point, and the post match, and he cuts this insane Sid promo about hunting for Goldberg and being there's another. He's there's another one. There's another one.
And the visual is amazing. Yeah.
Oh, dude, his faces are just incredible, and he's "Oh, Millennium." I can't even remember what all he says. He says all kinds of crazy shit.
And he's not holding a microphone, by the way, for those of you. He's just talking to the camera. The anticipation grows.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he's building up the Goldberg match though. He's building it up, and
which
the
paid
whole
off.
thing with the Millennium Man Sid stuff is it was kind of stupid how they did, because he'd come in and just attack random people in the hardcore division, and he'd count his wins.
Yeah, and they also he's not undefeated. We've seen him lose many times before.
Right.
Yeah, but Tenay does a good job of Tenay frames it as Sid's just nuts, right? I'm not going to tell him which rules.
And he has the there's at one point he has the Maestro starts playing into the ring, which is either right before this or right after this, where the Maestro starts playing into the ring and shit, or playing for him when he wins squashes, when he interferes in matches. But yeah, the whole presentation is actually kind of awesome. It's for me, it's somewhat of a guilty pleasure, but Sid's so fucking awesome, like, and like carries himself so well that I actually think it's like one of the last like cool things they did in WCW.
I agree.
Like especially before Russo came in, and like we've covered the match before, but like the best Sid performance ever is the Halloween Havoc '99 match, where he gets busted open in the before the match, and he cuts that insane promo where he's like covered in blood,
Let
and
it
then
bleed.
he's got like a 9.7 on the Muda scale out there. He's
He is
bleeding,
awesome.
selling.
I actually
Amazing.
rewatched that in preparation for this to see if it was as good as I remembered, and it was better. Like the most horrifying part at the end is when they get the towel and wipe his face off, and his face is fucking whiter than a fucking notebook paper, dude.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
he's lost so much blood, and he's just. Ugh.
It's insane, dude. It's
And then Rick
insane.
Steiner's there, like, stop the steal.
I remember that, Bill. I have to revisit the tape on that. Yeah, I'm with you, actually. I think this is all like an effective deal. This particular entry is funny in that it's so like this is the alternative of what we discussed. You know, we talked about how WCW squash matches being less produced allowed for like chaos and excitement. This is the opposite, the other side of the coin, where this being unproduced allowed for like there's not really anything really. The guys just kind of just sort of both slowly feed Sid, who sort of bluntly beats. And let me be clear, folks: handicap match, but the Public Enemy are not like they're not tagging in and out. Like Sid is just steadily beating them both up, and because the people are tired because they've watched 2 episodes of Thunder. Imagine that. They're just kind of like sitting there while Sid just sort of like clubs these guys.
In his vest. Doesn't even take the vest off for the whole match.
Yeah, that's something I forgot about because I definitely noted that. Like I was like, oh shit, he didn't even take the vest off here, which is a cool cut.
It meant that he sweat even more here than usual.
Sid is like the wettest wrestler ever,
dude.
Yeah,
that post match promo, it's actually like unsettling. He's pouring. This is quite the deal, Bobby. What did you make of this this interesting piece of business here?
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, it was probably the worst of the matches that we watched, just because there was really like no massive, highlight or takeaway from it. But handicap matches when you have a big guy against tag team, they're effective. Just because, and I know they weren't tagging it out, but like it's an effective way to kind of get a guy over like that, and. For what it was, it got the job done.
Yeah, I definitely think it was a smart kind of thing they were doing at the time. It's just this one is, it's just kind of, it's thrown together, but why wouldn't it be, dude? It's the Public Enemy versus Sid. I didn't expect them to sit down with a pen and paper, I mean, it is what it is, right? Hilarious matchup here, Alex. This feels like it's got your name on it, quite frankly.
Yeah. If you can believe it, this is the Public Enemy's last match in WCW.
I can believe it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is when I recommended this. It's because it's from that Millennium Man era. Which, by the way, we got the VHS physical media pop here, the Sid Millennium Man VHS special, which chronicles his rise as the Millennium Man. But yeah, on paper, this is just kind of a fascinating match. It's the Public Enemy. I've realized as time has gone on, they don't really mean much to people, like their name anymore. And they like, it had to be the generation I came up in this very specific time frame I came up in. It's like reading Pro Wrestling Illustrated and like Public Enemy, like they were like the first big act in Heyman's ECW. And then they went to WCW and were there for a while. They had the atrocious run in the WWF. And, but they were like, I always thought of them as like a name. And so I thought this was like an interesting match to include.
They, real quick, they did the angle where they came back and fought the Dudleys, right? In the ECW arena.
Mm-hmm. I believe that was House Party 99.
WWF before they came back to WCW.
Yeah,
that was a great angle. I'll say that.
It was House Party.
That was the last good Public Enemy thing ever. Was that?
I agree, and fittingly enough, I think that's the show I cited. House Party 99 is the one and only Sid in the ECW arena. So that's when they came back, and because the Dudleys have been calling them out forever, and like they did that whole thing where they kept playing their music and no one thought they would come out, and they finally did. But anyway, here, the problem with the network is that Jimmy Hart owns so many of those late era WCW theme songs, and Sid's late era WCW theme song fucking ruled. It was like,
Yeah.
and they have this dumb fucking like
I don't even know what.
PS1
Yeah, I don't even know
menu
what it
music.
was.
Yeah, it's like elevator music pretty much. And Sid's walking out like stalkingly, and this music's like, it's like, fuck off, dude. But we do get some of the classic WCW style where like I said, the aftermath shots where Sid gets the guy right in the camera and he's raking his face. And then there's this part where he takes Johnny Grunge to the corner and just starts slapping the shit out of him. He just starts like slapping him in the face repeatedly. And, it's in a way of Sid doing it. It seems like, Kevin Sullivan or someone told him like, rough him up. And Sid's like, well, I don't really want to do that. So he's not hitting him too hard, but for Sid, he's slapping him up. Double choke slam at the end's great. And then, the performance wise, there's not much to celebrate in 99 WCW, 2000 WCW. This very, very small window of time where Sid was bleeding together the Sid Vicious with Sycho Sid, of like being this thing here is like a kind of warped version of the Sycho Sid promo, but he's like just very delusional and very like, self-absorbed with the idea of what's going on here, and it's awesome. It's a promo that the live crowd can't hear, and they probably wouldn't give a shit if they could. Wasn't this in Amarillo? It was somewhere like it wasn't like a big wrestling town, but it's excellent. The promo is better than the match, but like I said, for me, just the match on paper seemed like a kind of fun.
I'm with you. Yeah, we always like to include those kind of quirky pieces of history. Absolutely. So Sid is, of course, he ends up being the world's champion because, of course, and he is the guy who's opposite. This is gonna be a sincere piece of history. I'm not doing this to derail Alex, but he is the guy who is opposite Chris Benoit for the infamous title win.
That match is very good.
That match is good, and just to get it out of the way now, their match at Fall Brawl 99 is also very good. They had very weird chemistry. Yeah, which I saw an interesting clip where he couldn't remember if Benoit was in the match, but Sid was talking about working with the little guys. He said he was doing a tag, and he said it was against Malenko and one of the other guys, one of those guys, and he said that Dean told him he had a cool drop toe hold spot, and said, this is Sid telling the story himself. He goes, and I said to him, we're not going to do that. I'm going to powerbomb one of you. You're going to tag out and get the other guy. They're going to powerbomb him and pin you both. And it makes it better that he's the one telling it, because he doesn't give a shit how that makes fans feel. He's like, yeah, that's what I said. So it's actually kind of surprising they had good matches, because I could see him kind of not seeing Benoit as a top star.
He didn't take chops. I know he refused the chops.
The Fall Brawl one though, he takes a German that he ends up getting dumped on his head.
I've seen the clip.
The match is good.
Is what it is. Benny, in the weird chemistry thing, some of Sid's best choke slams ever were against him, where it looked like the guy was literally falling out of a building when he choke slammed him. Right. So it's in that category of John Morrison and Sheamus in terms of guys you wouldn't think have good matches but end up do.
Absolutely. So obviously what happens there is he drops the belt and Benoit leaves anyway, and he's then the champion again soon after that. The point being, unless I'm mistaken, he's the champion when they go into the reboot, right? When they and then they have to start over, and then he just disappears. Yeah. He goes home.
His run in that 2000 bounce around there. Oh yeah, when he forfeits the belt, that's the one where Bischoff approaches him and goes, "What's the matter, Sid? Forgot your scissors?" And the live crowd
gets a great reaction.
Oh yeah, they go get the Warriors 89 pop there. Yeah. There is, I can't remember how it happened because it's 2000 WCW. There's some weird tag match that becomes a fatal four-way. It's something that basically what ends up happening on an episode of Nitro is Sid pins Hulk Hogan and then Sid disappears. He pins Hulk Hogan on television and then, just leaves.
Yeah,
and I appreciate
then of course, He comes back in the final months of WCW, works Scott Steiner at Starrcade, and then shortly after is the injury we've kind of alluded to throughout the night.
Compound fracture, the nastiest thing you'll ever see in a wrestling ring.
Someone asked it earlier in the chat if it's the worst wrestling injury ever, and I was trying to think. It's definitely up there.
Visually, probably, very much so. Probably.
I mean, Nick Gage died, but
visually, I think it's also because the way he landed, it was like you couldn't look anywhere else, right? Like I know when Dante snapped that was horrible looking, but he was like moving.
But like the thing is like that
Sid's
kind of goes in a glimpse, you know.
Sid was just
later, like Sid's where like the camera's like, here's his bone sticking out of his boot, you know.
It's awful,
yeah. Like that's the Hayabusa is the worst one ever, and I've seen
true. Hayabusa is probably.
I've seen that one time, and I've never rewatched it again. The Sid thing, though, I've seen a couple times, and you're exactly right. Of like, the camera doesn't know, like, what do I do? And so they just kind of stay on it.
The story on that is like, didn't like Johnny Ace tell him to do that?
I was hoping we get to that where Sid blames Johnny Ace for all that.
The big boot from the top rope.
I think it'd be really good. You know, we'll go into a 20-minute finish, and then you're going to go to the second rope and throw a big boot. All right, you have a good day.
But, like, I'm all for blaming Johnny Ace for everything, but, like, he talks about it like Johnny Ace, like, told him to do a 450 or something, you know?
Like, that's the thing. It's not even a good move.
It's classic Sid to go up there and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm a 300-pound, 6'8" guy. I'm going to go up to the top rope and I'm going to do a big boot and have all my weight on one foot, land on one foot. That's a good idea, Sid.
It doesn't look good.
In the WCW ring, no less.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Okay, other matches from this run, which again is really Sid's last run of note. The Goldberg match. I want to call out also the red and yellow match where Hulk brings back the red and yellow, and it's Hulk, Goldberg, and Sting versus Sid, Nash, and Rick Steiner. I rewatched this recently. It is a hoot, dude. They go like 8 minutes, and the place is fucking rocking. It's awesome. So that's a fun one too. But
all the segments with the Outsiders in Late 99 are hilarious.
They're very funny. Yeah, very funny.
The one and only WCW show I attended in my life, the main event of it was a Nitro. It was November of '99. It had Bret Hart versus Jeff Jarrett on it, so that's a match made for me. But the main event of it was Goldberg and Sid against the Outsiders. So, you don't get much more WCW than that. And it was Russo era, so it probably went 2 minutes. But honestly, the last time I watched it, I remember the Super Bowl 2000 main event being kind of fun. It was Jeff Jarrett, Sid, and Scott Hall in a triple threat match.
I can't remember it. Yeah.
That could just be my brain fucking with me, but Sid wrestled any and everyone during this run. It was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, he was. They kept going back to him, right? Like, because
and he was like, for we need to call out some of the bad with the good too. He was in some really awful segments, and WCW Worldwide, I think it was them that called it out, and I think I'm inclined to agree with them that the worst WCW ever got was that Summer '99 program where Savage feuded with Nash and Sid was like the hired gun, and so there was some bad stuff he was involved in, but most of it. Well, the point being, when he was left to go out there and just be Sid,
right?
Even those towns that were completely dead, where they were just drawing like 1,500 people, Sid went out there, chokeslam, powerbomb somebody. Yeah,
right. Absolutely. Okay, it's time. Our final match of the evening, if you can call it that, as we jump 12 years, May 27th, 2011.
Sid actually showed up for a booking.
More on that later. Paris and Syndicate refused to lose to as Sid Vicious clashes with the Mad King, Eddie Kingston. This is one of those matches, whenever it's brought up, people can't believe it happened. It didn't really happen, to be fair, which probably is part of that. We even got some of that response. Before we do that, let's bridge the gap. Just what I could figure out. So I found a clip where Sid was talking about, do you guys remember the Hogan show in Memphis where he worked the Big Show, Paul White?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is
7.
Yeah, 07, exactly.
That was Sid's comeback match, right? He hadn't wrestled in 6 years.
So I could be wrong on this because Sid told me this is what Sid said on the interview, and he's probably lying. What Sid told me was that he was gonna work the show. It was gonna be at the Coliseum, but then they changed it to the FedEx Forum, and Vince said, "This broke my brain today." Vince said, anyone who works that show will never hire him," which is funny because the main event is Hulk Hogan and the Big Show. But Sid claimed, is he on the show or not? Do we know if he's on the show? Like, can we find out?
What are you talking about? The Big Show wrestled Hulk Hogan in 2007?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
afterwards, the Big Show said he called the name The Big Show a slave name.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
And he was back in 5 months.
Yeah, it was like December 2000. It was like late in 2007. Yeah, he went right back
This
after.
is Memphis, 2007.
Mhm.
Hogan Knows Best is on the TV. They sold about 3,000 tickets to FedEx Forum.
What on earth?
Right?
This is blowing my mind right now.
And Sid claims he pulled out of the show when Vince said that because he wanted to go back to the World Wrestling Federation.
Oh.
This changed my life today because it's like, what do you mean he wanted to go back to it?
What's his cage match look like? 'Cause didn't he wrestle in 07 at some point?
Dude, I got his cage match pulled up right here. He worked in 04 in IWS, and he teamed with PCO in a Battle
Okay, so
Royal.
he came. It was 3 years after the injury. Then so
There
I
you
know
go.
it was like he took. I mean,
And then in 07, the cage match has PWU. July of 07, he wrestled Too
that's
Cold
the one I was
Scorpio.
thinking of. Maybe the 04 match didn't get on cage match until
He did also, Oracle, you may be thinking of, in 2009 and 2008 for me. He worked Lawler a couple of times in Memphis too, which probably made some. Him and Lawler had a 16-minute match in 2008.
Oh my God.
Jesus.
it had to have been Lawler doing like hide the chain stick. Literally had to.
Yeah, has to have been.
Dude, okay, sorry. Joe, you brought this on yourself. We're going down this whole card.
It's fine. It's fine. Go for it. Go for it.
We got the Barbarian against Moondog Cujo, Greg Valentine against Curtis Hughes, Jazz against Christy Ricci and Miss Passion, Abdullah the Butcher against Al Green, Bill Dundee.
07.
Yes, Bill Dundee and Dutch Mantel against Coco Beware and Bobby Eaton with Slick.
Oh, brother, that's got to be like a 3 1/4.
Slick is the icing there.
Brutus Beefcake, and of course, because why show up, Bubba the Love Sponge
Oh,
defeated
fuck.
Ricky Murdoch and Big Nasty Bill. Brian Christopher defeated Buff Bagwell.
Oh man.
All right, I'm not going to lie. I might have to find some fan cam of this one. Ricky Morton, Kid Cash, and Too Cold Scorpio in a... no, I'm sorry. Too Cool 2, which is, I guess, Too Cool. I got ahead of myself there. My dyslexia kicked in. And then Hulk Hogan and Paul White went 13 minutes at the FedEx Forum with 2,200 people. How did I never know about this show? Jesus.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a moment in time. And again, Sid did not work this show because he was hoping to return to the WWF.
He was gearing up for a return run, brother.
What the fuck does imagine HD WWE 2008.
Well, the roster
What does
was
Sid
stacked.
do? What is it exactly? Does he work with Fit or something? What does he do? Who would he?
Dude,
What
imagine
possibly would he have done?
That's the thing earlier we were talking about. If he had stuck around in '97, the thing that's always funny is the contract Warrior signed when he came back in '96 was through 2000. So imagining the Ultimate Warrior in the Attitude Era being like puppies, but think about Sid coming around in the Attitude Era. It would have been just ECW Sid. There's no man fucking tough enough. But then in 08, who would he wrestle? He would have been like JBL's bodyguard or some shit.
Oh my god, JBL and Sid.
Or no. Let's do this. Let's be serious here. Who could he have been a good enforcer for? MVP could have been MVP's enforcer.
Yeah.
I like that.
Funny. Just the idea of him on Because you know, like the way they looked at that point, like how the production had changed, just Sid just being there every
Remember
week.
how him be like Gregory Helms enforcer when Gregory Helms.
Yep.
Yeah,
Picture a Sid Matt Hardy match on 2008 ECW.
that shit would be good.
I was
Matt
just about
Hardy
to
was
say,
really good.
we'd fast forward 16 years, and Oracle would be like, "Man, there's a Sid Justice Matt Hardy match on ECW. You got to check out."
So he looks like Dax now. Okay, so anyway, I thought that was relevant because I had no clue what Sid did in like the decade that we didn't cover, and so that just fascinating. Again,
At
it's
home, play
even
softball, I guess.
dude, it's so much funnier that the reasoning was that, considering that both guys in the main event, like, of course they worked for Vince again. Like Paul White was back in Mums, but anyway, so here we are, 2011. Now I did some digging on this. Now Sid did do pretty regular indies in this time, you know, relative. So Pro Wrestling Syndicate, from what I understand, they booked Sid 3 times, and this was the one time he showed up.
I remember the show because like they were like celebrating on their social media that he actually was there for it. Like,
right. But I think he, even on this show, even when he showed up here, I think he no-showed the meet and greet. I think.
God bless.
Yeah, I think so. And you can tell there is a very unique atmosphere for this because we pick up at what we presume is the bell. I don't think the bell actually ever rings because the music's still playing. We don't know. The match is listed as 5 seconds on Cage Match, which gives you an idea. He slaps Eddie. Eddie goes to the eyes. They hit the ropes. Boom, boom, choke slam, finish. And the people boo the finish, right? Like as though they've been conned. Yeah. And I think that's not just because the match was reshot. I think it's also because like
I'm reading the comments. Sorry, I'm just laughing at this.
Yeah, I'll put that on the screen. It's very good. Actually, Sid was supposed to be an AIW show. He claimed that Trump's travel ban prevented him from flying to Cleveland. An absolute king.
Do you remember the promoter of that recorded the conversation where Sid called him to cancel?
No.
Like, he recorded, and they played it. And then, real quick, just before we go into this piece of business here, someone asked about if Sid ever did a TNA shot, and like that to me is the most insane thing because as we've talked about in the history of doing this, like it seemed like everybody that wasn't in the WWF did like a TNA shot in 2002, 3, or 4. Like and Sid never showed up there. I did see in 2009 here, though, he wrestled Frankie the Mobster in Quebec, Canada. For any of y'all who know who Frankie the Mobster is, I cannot begin to fathom what that match was like. That probably was a very entertaining piece of business.
It probably looked like this one. I imagine. So yeah, I think the atmosphere may have been shaped by that kind of reputation at the time. It's very funny. Like, you know, it's 2011 here. Obviously, Eddie Kingston would go on to do much bigger things, but he was a big deal on the indies. But I want to stress this, people don't have familiarity. Eddie Kingston's like years deep into being a name on the indies at this point. He's not like, which makes it even funnier.
It's just like 5 years removed from when he was like a main eventer in CZW when CZW meant something.
And when is the big Quack match? It's the end of this year, right? You know, when he wins the whatever the fuck they called the Shikara belt, when they finally did a belt. What was that show called?
Yeah. Fuck. Wait, didn't Kingston won the belt and had it for like years, right?
For a long time, yeah, but the big title match where he wins it is like at the end of this year. Just to give some perspective, I know for a lot of people that aren't familiar with Eddie before AEW, like he's like a thing at this point, like very much. So there is no match. There's a post-match thing where he takes Eddie off the stretcher and then power bombs him a couple of times, then he's back on, and then away we go. That's that.
For me is when like Sid's like doing whatever to the fans, whatever, and Eddie's just like kind of like half selling, like, all right, Sid, like go ahead and do your shit. Let's get this. He's got like this, like
Eddie's body language here is very funny. There's a lot going on.
He goes up for that choke slam though.
Yeah, he does.
Oh yeah.
His approach is very much like let's get it done the way you wanted it done, but you can tell it's it's an interesting thing. Hilarious reaction for this match, Oracle.
Oh yeah, this is quite funny. We get whatever it was at the start here, and Eddie takes like 1 or 2 punches, and Sid, takes him down and sends him to the floor and works the crowd a little bit. It's a choke slam and powerbomb maybe.
It's just a choke
for
slam.
the finish.
Yeah,
Just
that's
choke
right.
slam.
Yeah, it's just choke slam for the pin, and then
And then you have the business and the
beat up a
afterwards.
little bit more. Sid actually looks in decent shape here, believe it or not.
He looked
the
great.
legs of understandably the legs are suffering, but he looks visually looks great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is the unfortunate time when we didn't get that aforementioned 08 run on Sci-Fi. Instead, he had to do this. So, yes, there ain't much here, Bobby, is there really? But it's a thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's not much, but like it's cool because Kingston became a television wrestler that everyone knows, and it's just kind of a cool piece of history. It's a really nice way to end this.
He won the Continental Classic, Bob.
He did, yeah. Look at
Triple
that.
Crown.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Sid would have been very good in the Continental Classic, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. Alex, any takes? Dream match here.
My take is this, much like the Public Enemy match, it felt necessary just because it's like this happened. Yeah. And then 2, by the time the second powerbomb comes around, you know what Sid has done? He's won the crowd back for the most part. They're wanting him to powerbomb.
They do get with Kingston. It. Yeah.
One of my favorite parts is because King has gotten in really good shape over the past few years. I think he quit smoking and all that, and but King had a bit of a paunch there for a while in his indie run. And when Sid goes to powerbomb, you just hear someone behind the camera go, "Yeah, right." And then fucking Sid gets him up and dumps him, and King, takes it. Eddie Kingston's one of my favorites ever, and especially like prior to this period, Eddie Kingston and CZW. I had to find what this match is sandwiched between for Eddie Kingston, and it's even more fantastic than I could have hoped for. So this is on the 27th of May in the year of 2011. On the 22nd of May, he wrestled Chuck Taylor at Chikara, and then on June 3rd in the Hammerstein Ballroom, he wrestled Homicide in the debut show of the Urban Wrestling Federation that was filmed for a pay-per-view. So just imagine, like, the weekend before this, you're calling him, you're being told by Sid you're going to take a chokeslam and count the lights, and the next weekend, Homicide's like, "Oh, what do you want to do out there?" So it's hell of a run for the Mad King. I do think it's a fitting note to end on, because this is literally one of Sid's last 3 matches, but also just what I said. Crowd's mad, and then Sid just kind of looks around, and they kind of start murmuring a little bit. He gets in the ring and power bombs him, and immediately 80% of the crowd's one more time, because you still have people that are mad at the end when he walks off. That you can hear a couple people booing and whatnot and jeering, but it's just classic Sid. All he's got to do is look over and and then people are going to be with it. And to Kingston's credit, he's half grizzled vet and then half maybe kind of marking out a little bit, just selling for Sid here. So it's a bit comical the way he's doing things, and Sid tips over the stretcher he's on at one point, and Kingston falls like he slipped on a banana peel. He's like, "Oh God," on the ground and stuff. So there's sarcasm mixed in with it, and see, this is one of those things that doesn't really exist anymore, of what's going to be the match 20 years from now or 15 years from now, I guess, for the sake of this, that someone's that happened, because there's not anyone like Sid that just does shit so sparingly.
That was the great tragedy of Braun not doing anything on the indies other than that control your narrative bullshit, dude. That was we could have got so much weird Braun shit, and he didn't do anything. He just did anyway, enough about
Braun
that. Yeah,
Strowman versus Jordan Oliver.
Anyway, the following year, Bob, there was this Heath Slater match. Of course, Heath Slater at the time was doing the Legends thing, and this was Raw 1000, Bob.
Yes,
right?
Correct. Yeah,
you made a good point.
Yeah, leading up to that, he faced Vader, which I think was probably Vader's last Raw match as well, obviously. I know Rikishi was one after Sid. Lita was at Raw 1000. But yeah, Sid just showing up. And again, he hadn't done anything since 1997. He wasn't in the Legends. He never made the Hall of Fame. He never showed up at the Hall of Fame. They do legend shows every year. He was never there. So he kind of just shows up on Raw, and like the crowd is kind of confused, which is unfortunate, but gets in there, looks just like Sid, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that being like a huge thing that he just looked like Sid. It's a really yeah, it wasn't Raw 1000. Was it not Raw 1000?
It was leading up to it.
Okay, my bad. Yeah, it's a quirky thing. He was great in those matches, dude. He's such a veteran.
He was
very, 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 very polished pro wrestler, even him not in like the most explosive ways.
But yeah, and since then he hasn't done anything with them either. He got in the 2K games.
He did?
Like towards the end of the 2010s. I think 19 was the last one he was in. He was in, I think, like 18 and 19. He wasn't in many of them. He's not in it now.
Did he get the Sid Pyro in the game?
No. Oh. It's a shame.
Because I know you got the double figure that's like got the referee deal that you can take off and it has a single or some business, right?
I have that in my little Sid shrine that I posted online.
Bob's right. He was on 2K19. So, okay. This is very intriguing to me because you're right. He's like kind of like a mystery man in this regard.
He got an elite. He did get an elite figure several years ago that was just Sycho Sid.
Yes, he did. I just saw it. That's cool. That seems to be his only two.
More often than not, when you're in the video game, especially for 3 years like that, that comes with a Hall of Fame induction. So it's kind of strange that they never did that. But I mean, whatever. But like,
yeah.
Can you imagine what that speech would be like?
Oh yeah.
That's the thing. I think his reputation in wrestling is just weird, right? I don't know. Strange. As the rest of this show has been, it's kind of in line with that. He's just a unique guy to fit into history, I think. But that's the story, folks, for us anyway. That's our 7 squashes of Sid. So quite the road, quite the ride. Almost an impossible question to ask, but I'll ask anyway. Final thoughts. Let's wrap this up. Let's talk legacy of Sid that we haven't already covered, of course, because we've gone kind of all over the place here. But I don't know how you can answer that after we just finished on an Eddie Kingston match. But here we are. Bob, give it your best shot, bro. Any final thoughts on Sid?
No, he's one of a kind. He's very unique. He's not going to be on anyone's top whatever in ring guys, but like he's going to always have a place for people like us. And eventually, if you watch enough wrestling, you see enough of his matches, you'll come around on him as well and be like, this guy rules, even if you don't think that going in. And I think really in the past couple of years, there's been a lot more of that on Twitter.
Yeah, and
it's good. He does deserve that because he did main event 2 WrestleManias. He's in a lot of big moments, and it's nice. And kind of the overall theme, like if there's a wrestler who knows their place in a good way like that, more power to him. I'll always support a guy like that.
That's why you call them the Good Brothers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're great brothers, actually.
They work now, though. They work a lot.
I know, it's kind of lame. Oracle, final thoughts on Sid?
I think the best explanation I can give is somebody kind of put in the chat, a while back, but he was great at doing the things he was, good at. Like the things he was good at, he was awesome, and like the things he shouldn't be doing, he was terrible. But he was terrible because he shouldn't be doing them. He's a perfect example of in wrestling. There you go. Exactly. I think that's the perfect like encapsulation of Sid.
Yeah.
And like he was, kind of trying to sort of piece that together a little bit more. Like he's a great example of a wrestler finding what they're good at, and obviously someone who's not like supremely talented in other ways, finding what they're good at and taking that as far as they possibly can. And it kind of shows you, though he was definitely in a different time, that can take you a very long way.
Right. Absolutely.
And like that was his charisma presence. Of course, he had the size and the look too, but like just knowing the strengths and like running that as far, as you can with it can get you pretty much anywhere in wrestling, even if you're not necessarily the most gifted athletically or the most technically sound or psychologically sound or whatever you want to say. Whether or not he believed it or not, based on shoot interviews, like he had this ability to play to the camera and understood that he was charismatic and took that to like amazing heights for a guy who otherwise, other than like being a tall, imposing dude, had really nothing to offer.
Right.
He just knew how to capitalize that on that and did it very, very well.
Absolutely. Alex, let's conclude your thoughts here. I think we have some images, some photos to go along with it, right? So take it away.
From WrestleMania 13 weekend, very young, 9-10-year-old Alex. We found the hotel that the wrestlers were staying at, and that might have been the day after or whatever. And I've learned, as I've gotten older, about the decor, not decorum. What's the rapport you need with wrestlers and whatnot. And I was just a little kid. It's like, Sid, can you sign this? He's like, yeah. I don't remember too much about the interaction. I remember him just being in that sweatsuit looking like Sid. The main one, I met Brett that weekend, and that's a memory that's like still with me because Brett's one of my heroes, and he was so fucking nice. But very funny. And then Sid is just like, he's fucking Sid, man. And at this point in my life, I'm old. I'm the oldest one on the panel here. And it's one of those things of like, if I start a conversation with a wrestling fan, they're like, Sid sucks. I'm like, well, I don't know what common ground we're going to have, You have some growing up to do. That's how I kind of come to it. With the exception of the Shawn Michaels match we referenced and a couple other big exceptions to the rule. I don't know if Sid ever had a match over 5 minutes that I would say was great, but dude, he's Sid. Look at him. He's one of the all-time, like, I mean, we get hyperbolic from time to time on these, but like, just from that Sid we started with against Lee Scott, you look at him, that's got to be one of the all-time just looks for pro wrestling. I don't mean just physique. I mean just like the huge fucking chin, like everything about him, he wasn't the greatest physique in the history of wrestling. That goes to prime Kerry Von Erich. I gave that award out on our Von Erich's Grin Grappler. But for Sid, man, he's a guy that when we did our Asuka one, I remember like my closing thoughts were something along the lines of, she's like Rob Van Dam or Sid, man. She's over everywhere she goes. I remember Joe kind of doing like raising an eyebrow, and I was like, yeah, that thought probably could have been more thought out a bit better, but it's true. I'm like, Sid, this is an example of it. We spanned 20 years here. Yeah, just in the matches we watched. And even that last one where people are mad, as soon as Sid just kind of, does the head tilt and does a power bomb, people are like, fuck yeah, it's Sid.
Yeah.
So, Josh Bishop is an indie wrestler who pretty much, for all intents and purposes, just does a Sid tribute act now. And I've seen him have some pretty fun matches, and even to the hair and everything. He's got like the blonde perm and shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's necessarily the way to go, but I've also seen him have some awesome matches and whatnot. And Sid he will go down as a very unique entry in the history of professional wrestling. I already said exception to the rule, but that he's kind of that. Like, he's the guy of that generation that would never hang around long enough to have to do the Hulk Hogan shit of like politicking and figuring shit out of like, oh, this brother, how do I maneuver this? Don't get behind me. And then he also wasn't Brett or Sean of like, I love this. This is my life. And then he just seamlessly, while being a main eventer, bounced around promotions. Like, it's that doesn't, you look at the history of the 90s and the 80s and the 90s in wrestling, this idea of the main eventer, it was a big fucking deal when Ric Flair went to the WWF in 1991. Like, it was a big fucking deal when Hulk Hogan went in 1994. Sid just was like, hey, I'm here. What do you need me to do? Like, he just bounced around. And a legacy, a confusing legacy, because I don't think people
Yeah.
appreciate how good of a performer he was. Because people, especially nowadays, get too hung up on work rate and match quality and whatnot. But then also just from like a LOL, like reading like his match listing perspective, a guy who, unlike anybody, and just because he was such a big deal and a draw and a main eventer, and he would show up in ECW for a few shots and then go back to WWF or go back to WCW, like these things he would do. Just a very unique cat, a different cat. We know that definitely from his personality. But I want to circle back to a point I made at the beginning, and I think it sums up Sid perfectly. He worked 2 WrestleManias and he main evented both of them.
Says it all. I think the real conclusion to this show, folks, very subtle. Alex just dropped it in there. Alex said he's not sure that being a direct cosplay act on the indies is the way to go, which had a far greater meaning than I think he was aware at the time. So keep that in mind, all the young kids out there. Put the kick pads away. There's another there's another way to go. But no, I'm with you completely, and it's unique. We've gone back to that word a lot, and I think that's it. I do think it's increasingly apparent that while nerds like us pop for Sid, and there's been a shift in sentiment towards him, I think it's I do think he's going to be a victim of not being part of the in-house history. I think that's already apparent. I think that was even apparent in the Heath Slater match and the reaction he got. It's
I forgot to mention
a shame.
that. I remember watching that live when Bobby was talking about it. I forgot my buddy Reed lived with me at that time, and we've that's one of the things we bonded over wrestling wise, like in college, was like Sid. And I remember watching that, and I don't know if it was out there that he was going to be there, but when Heath Slater's like, "I'm the master of the world," we're like, is Sid going to show up? And then the music hit. I remember we both just yelled at the TV like, "What?" And then Sid came out, to a very tepid reaction.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's one, not being part of the in-house history, and two, the modern generation will crucify you if you treat wrestling as a business. And Sid just kind of I don't think Sid could have told you who fucking Wild Bill Curry was, or who beat Bruno for the WWF title back in the day. So I think people don't think he wanted it bad enough, when in actuality he was honestly, after talking about this, I don't know if there's anyone more born to be a pro wrestler than Sid Udy. But
he didn't give a shit, dude.
Yeah, that's it's like I said, on this side of the curtain, well, I guess I gotta go get some chicken breasts, and then on the other side of the curtain,
yeah, truly fascinating. And again, he gets more interesting when you watch him talk, because you can't always figure out if he's even fully aware of what Sid was, which makes him even more of an enigma. So, yeah, one of one, and a unique addition to Grin Grappler. The archives here, a special episode. I now have an excuse to resurrect Grin Grappler After Dark that we did all those months ago. So now if you go to latenightgrin.com, it has 2022, 2023, 2024, and then it has specials where this will now live alongside the After Dark episode we did where CM Punk returned to the WWF. So there may be some, there may in future, maybe there'll be an occasion where we could do similar things. Maybe just maybe.
12 bouts of Bill there. That was kind of an offshoot.
Yeah. I'm torn on that. Very torn. I don't know. We'll discuss it in our post-show meeting. Speaking of such, we're going to be putting together the Jeff Jarrett lineup here shortly, folks. Probably in a couple of weeks, we're probably going to be back with that, right? Most likely. We'll see if it works for everyone. If not, then maybe 1 week later than that. So stay tuned. There'll be an announcement tweet coming up in the coming days for Grin Grappler Jeff Jarrett that will be with you all shortly. All right. Let's do some plugs and promotions, and then let's go here and talk some shop. All right. Bobby, anything to put over?
Late Night Grin 118 S the Grinners this Friday. That'll be a lot of fun. I will be there. I don't know if I'll be there right at the start, because I'm going to try and see Twisters at some point Friday night.
Hell yeah.
But I will be there. That'll be fun.
Use the hashtag AskTheGrinners on Twitter and or X. We have some good questions already. I'm trying not to read them because I want to be able to give it fresh, but I saw like there's some good ones already part of. So, hashtag Ask the Grin is it myself, Bob, Shoot, and Manny on Friday. So, that's this week's Grin. Oracle, any plugs, any promotions?
Be at the Late Night Grin Q&A on Friday. I will not be there. I'll be on vacation. I will be returning to the Late Night Grin myself 2 weeks from Friday to preview SummerSlam Cleveland.
The SummerSlam.
2024.
My God.
And then I've got some open dates in August.
You taking bookings?
Looking for bookings.
Yeah, I'm taking bookings. I'll be open. And seems like we also have, the Grin itself has some open dates in August. We're going to have to figure some things out. But
I have a plan.
There's a 3-week in a row slate. Might as well just go ahead and cover the summer here. Of 3 pay-per-views in a row. Wembley, All In. Bash of Berlin, All Out. I will not be present for Wembley. I will be present for the other 2 previews.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on in our summer. We'll have to figure out those August dates that are empty. We'll talk some shop about that, folks. But
we will.
Good things ahead for the Grin.
Absolutely, and good things ahead for the Contrarians too. Alex, talk to us about the upcoming business, the Contrarians. Tell us the latest.
Yeah, our summer journey right now of we're going through the film catalogs of Peter Bogdanovich and PJ Hogan. Peter Bogdanovich, both accomplished filmmakers in their own right, but Peter Bogdanovich specifically, a very interesting career, very interesting story about that guy. We're so Julio's and his wife are going to Italy for a month, so we're basically have just been recording nonstop to get everything in the can, ready to go. So we'll just be dropping those in rapid fire coming up. So we are thecontrarians.com, the Contrarians and all your podcatchers, and at Contrarian Prime on all social media platforms. And keep an eye out for Grin Grappler Jeff Jarrett. A lot of good to come still.
Absolutely. Folks, stay locked in at Late Night Grin. Even if we can't stream there, you can still see what's coming up and see the very funny graphics that emerge like this one. Suddenly, I'm dominant. Those are the words I want you to think about tonight, folks, as you leave this show. Suddenly, I'm dominant. Something that Jim Ross was convinced was the most dynamic and creative line he'd ever come up with. And that is why professional wrestling is unmatched. We hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, I'll say it for Bob, smash the like button, hit subscribe, ring the bell. And most importantly of all of those, actually, now that we're done, leave a comment below here. Tell us your favorite Sid side. Comment something about professional wrestling. Sid, if you really want to be specific. But either way, keep grinning. All hail. And enjoy this outro, folks. Have a good one.
Smell the power.